close the doors of your mind, close the gates of your palace, within your heart and your mind, within your center of your being, inside of the center of yourself, within down through your belly button, down through your shore that connects to Yahuwah Elohim in the highest Shamay'im. Close the doors of your mind from all deceitfulness of riches, and all hatred, and all jealousy, all envy, and all strife, all complaining, all pride, all arrogance, and all conceitedness within oneself. For today is a day of freedom. Today is a day that Yahuwah has given as another Shabath, that we may cease from our labors, cease from our own ways and our own thoughts, and our own selfish self, that we may ride upon the high places, upon the wings of the wind, that we may feed us with our akla, a call, that we may walk in righteousness and newness of mind throughout the week. For today we acknowledge the one who made all of the heart of the earth, all of the nahar of the earth, all the rivers and streams, even the rivers and streams that flow through your body, that comes out of your tongue, through your throat, through your gagaro, through your tongue, and allows men to come to life. The one who allows the plants and the trees to grow, Yahuwah Elohim, by his rain and snow, even the bar that comes out of your mouth that allows things to grow into your life and allows things to be destroyed in your own life. So we look at our own self as that being in the image and likeness of Yahuwah Elohim, who created all things by his voice. And by his voice, he wounds, he kills, and makes alive. He dishes out his punishment by his word, by his debar. And he also forgives and heals by his debar, by his word. And just like the very thing that can bring curses to your life, that very same tongue that you have in your being, in your possession right now, can bring healing to your life. Just by you speaking, just the word. So even as we move forward in kindness, ahab, joy, peace, patience, meekness, temperance, they say gentleness, self-control. We move forward in faithfulness, knowing that without faithfulness, there ain't gonna be no gentleness and self-control. Knowing that self-control comes through the actual experiences in your life to know what self-control is. In order to have self-control, you have to be out of control. And each one of us, they say, at one point in your life has been out of control. But at the same time, you say some things within you, some bits and pieces, and some little tittles in there, something here and there that are still not and don't have self-control. And that's where the bar comes in. So we look at ourselves, we look at our inward being, right? So this is Malachi chapter 6, actually Malachi chapter 2. Actually go to Malachi chapter 3 and verse 1. Malachi chapter 3 and verse 1. Malachi chapter 3 verse 1. And it says, behold, I send my messenger, and he will prepare a way before me. He said, before me. He said, before I get there. And guess what? And Yahuwah, it says, and Yahuwah, whom you seek, will suddenly come to his temple. So he's coming back. He's coming to his temple. He's coming to his mikdash, his mishkan. He's coming to his tent. He's coming back. Right? He's coming back to his house. And the messenger of the covenant in whom you delight, behold, he is coming, saith Yahuwah of hosts. But how can you endure the day of his coming? And who can stand when he appears? Like, who's going to be able to do it when he comes back? For he is like a refiner's fire, like fuller's soap. Like, he's so clean. He only thing he come and do is clean things up. Fire purifies, soap cleans. Just like you say, just ephah, just bath, and just mazon, right? These are all a part of his cleansing process. Verse 3 says, he will sit as a refiner and purifier of silver, and he will purify the sons of Louis and refine them like gold and silver, and they will bring offerings in righteousness to Yahuwah. Just like we said, present your bodies a living sacrifice, Qahalath, and acceptable to Yahuwah as your spiritual worship. Knowing that this purification of this fire and the purification of his soap, right? You say, just like the virgins had to wash themselves in Hospital's house, they had to use the cosmetic soaps for a certain period of time to cleanse yourself so you can present yourself in the proper way in front of the king. That's your master. Right? And it says right here, verse 4, then the offering of Yehuda and Jerusalem will be pleasing to Yahuwah. So once Yahuwah starts cleansing these offerings that people have, that they bring, then the offering of Yehuda and Jerusalem will be pleasing to Yahuwah. Why? Because there's a purification that comes from being a kahan, or a person that offers spiritual worship. And then there is a purification when everybody comes together as one in Jerusalem. There, it looks a certain way. It looks good. Right? It just looks good when everybody comes together as one, because everybody's purified and has this pure offering and then everybody comes together, and then it looks good. It doesn't look all erratic and look, everything's over here and over there. One person looks like this and the other person looks like that. It just looks better. Right? That's the only reason it's happening. It looks better. Right? He say looks don't mean anything. Yes, it does. And it says, and they will be offering of righteousness to Yahuwah. And it says, then the offering of Yehuda and Jerusalem will be pleasing to Yahuwah in the day, as in the days of old, as in the former years. He said, back in the day, he said people looked a certain way. People conduct themselves a certain way. The women are conducting themselves a certain way. The men conducted themselves a certain way. The children conducted themselves a certain way. Nobody, when they were actually in correct standing. Right? But when the incorrect standing came, then here comes the purifying refiner's fire, right? Verse 5, then I will draw you near for judgment. He's going to judge and let's see what you got. First it has to look correct. Then he said, I'm going to draw you near to judgment. He said, judge not, lest you be judged. Because once everybody come together, and everybody boasting about what they can do and how they look and what they can do and their offering and what they have and boast about what they said or what they know or anything like that. But once everything gets established back and everything comes out together, he says, okay, then I'll judge you and see if this is actually true or not. And then it says, I will be a swift witness against the sorcerer, right? So we look at yourself. He said, look at inward man. I will be a swift witness against the sorcerer, against the adulterers, right? So just because you look good, don't mean you're on the inside of your heart and your mind that you got something, that you look a certain way on the outward man that your inward man don't show. And guess what he says? Also, against those who swear falsely. He said these vows that people make, right? All these vows that people make, don't ever make a vow when you're angry. Right? And don't ever make a vow. He said, don't ever make a vow when you're happy either. When everything's going good. Don't ever swear falsely. Why? Because then you also, he said, you have to consider. He said, you have to consider. Right? Because that's what people do. Right? And it says right here, and against those who oppress the hired worker of his wages. Right? Because people need money. You know how they say, I need that check. Right? I don't know why people be thinking like people don't need no check. He said, I need my money. Why? Because when people do things for you, and he said, I need my money. Right? I need the currency. You see how it is in the world today? You see how much these prices go up? You see how these people say, what? He said, and these are the things that people are doing today. The rich, non-believer and believer. Everybody's doing this. They hold you up. The people don't want to do their job properly, and then guess what? Cost you a whole. I don't feel like doing it. I'll go next week. He said, I need you actually to finish this week, right? These are all a part of this, right? And it says, against those who oppress the hired worker of his wages, the widow and the fatherless, against those who thrust aside the sojourner, like people who just come upon you, right? Who are the strangers. You just thrust them aside. I ain't giving you nothing for you, right? Just throw you out, right? Those who thrust aside the sojourner and do not fear me, says Yahuwah of hosts. He said, you don't even fear me. It's just like you thrust aside the sojourner, or it says, swift witness against the widows and the fatherless, against those who thrust aside the sojourner. Those are people who don't have, like I say, those male figures. Yeah, they don't have the male figure. And then you thrust them aside. Like they don't exist. That's like a man putting away his wife and not for adultery. Right? Then they say, you go from one male figure to another male figure. But at the same time, and do not fear me, says Yahuwah. He said, you ain't scared. He said, I ain't scared. He said, you should be. He said, you should fear. Verse 6 says, for I, Yahuwah, do not change. So we just read all that. So he ain't changing. So people say, oh, he's going to change his mind. Nah, that's it. He's not changing. So he said you should go read that again. Right? You know how he say? Read it again. Go over it. Go on it. Then you go from English to Hebrew. Study every single word. Why? Because then it becomes what? He's like, okay, he ain't changing. He says, for I, Yahuwah, do not change. Therefore, the children of Jacob are not consumed. Right? Because he would have already consumed us by now. But he said the children of Jacob, the 12, the Shalosh Matah, the 12 tribes, he said, I would have already consumed them already. It says, from the days of your fathers, you have turned aside from my statutes and have not kept them. He's like, since Abraham, Isaac, Jacob came on the scene, you know, those they call them the OGs, right? Since Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah came on the scene, he said, y'all been acting absolutely insane, going all over the place. He said, both male and female. He's like, what is wrong with everybody, right? He said, and get what he says, return to me and I will return to you. So he's like, look at here. Return to me and I will return to you. So it's not on, whose responsibility is that? So who is like, I ain't changing. So therefore, return to me and I will return to you. So whose responsibility is that? It's called push away. It's not my responsibility for what you do. Right? And then he says right here, and I'll return to you, says Yahuwah of hosts. But you say, how shall we return? He said, how are we going to go? You didn't give us no instructions. Right? And he said, will a man rob Elohim? Yeah. He said, yeah, you are robbing me. He said, how you robbing me? You know how he said? You robbing me. Just like how somebody gets robbed or something. He said, man, you robbing me. You changing my wages like 10 times. He's like, man, you robbing me. And you know what he says? He said, how you robbing me? But you say, how have we robbed you? Thou shalt not steal. Right? But he says, in your tithes and contributions. He said, in your tithes and contributions. What do you mean? Tithes and contributions. You are cursed with a curse, for you are robbing me, this whole nation, of you. Bringing the full tithe into the storehouse, that there may be food in my house. He's like, man, I'm hungry. Right? I am hungry. He said, I don't want to eat no gold and no silver. He said, I want food. I want some bread. I want some fruits. I want to deck out with melons and watermelons. I want things inside of there that's gonna make. I need some food, cause there ain't no food. Ain't no barley, no wheat. It ain't nothing in the storehouse. And you know what he says? And thereby put me to the test. He said, he said, you know how he say, I'm hungry, and you ain't gonna make me no food. So you really testing me. That's how Yahuwah is. You really testing me right now. He's like, you really testing. He's like, y'all testing me. He says, Yahuwah, because we know Yahuwah doesn't change. He ain't changed not one bit. He says, if I will not open, what he says, put me to the test, and says Yahuwah of hosts, and see if I will not open the windows of Chamy'shy for you and pour you down a Parach that until there is no more need. Why? Because then, if Yahuwah does that, there's gonna be food in this house. So Yahuwah's like, if I pour down this water, then you have food to put in my house. You know, in your body, you know, the food that you put in your natural house. No, you're not. Your body's the temple of Yahuwah. You have food to put in your house. You know, the proper food that Yahuwah eats. Right? But it says, but guess what it says, verse 11, and I will rebuke the devourer for you, so that it will not destroy your fruits of your soil and the vines of your field. It says, not vines in the field shall not fail to bear, says Yahuwah of hosts. Then all the nations will call you Parach. You know, the nations call you cursed right now. This is what he do. For you will be a land of delight, says Yahuwah of hosts. He said, you ain't got nothing on your land. What you got? Your words have been hard against me, says Yahuwah of hosts. But you say, how have we spoken against you? but you know how people say. You have said it is vain to serve Elohim. That's what we say. It's worthless. It is worthless, right? You know the sad part about it? That's exactly, he said it is worthless, right? Right, this is First Chronicles. First Chronicles 29. I think it's... Hey, go to Second Chronicles. Go to Second Chronicles. Dabarim HaYamim 15. Dabarim HaYamim 15 and 1. Dabarim HaYamim, Second Chronicles 15 and 1. Second Chronicles 15 and 1. It says, the Ruach of Elohim came upon Azariah. So the Ruach came upon him. Ruach Marakaf al-Panim. Abraku Kanaf Halak Ruach. He said Ruach came upon him. He was riding on the wings of the wind in his mind. You know how we say? Gone. Right? He was riding on the wings of the wind like an eagle. And he says, the son of Obed. You know Obed. We talked about Obed. Obed. You know how you come down that lineage? Right? Obed. But they said Obed, right? And it says, and he went out to meet Asa and said to him, hear me, Asa. He's like, hey, Shema. And all Yehuda and Benjamin, right? Hear me. Yahuwah will be with you while you are with him. So it's like a man and a woman in a relationship. Yahuwah will be with you while you be with him. He's like, Yahuwah said, I change not. You see all the things, the stipulations that I have said in Malachi? He said, I'll be with you as long as you be with me. People say, how you get all the love? He said, as long as you be with me. How I get taken care of it? As long as you be with me. That's how Yahuwah is. And you know what he says? If you seek him, he will be found of you. He said, I'll always be around. If you seek me, I'm always be around. You ain't got to be like, where are you? I'm right here. You get what he says? If you seek me, you will be found of you. But if you forsake him, but if you leave, he will forsake you. He said, you ain't never going to find me. He said, you ain't never going to find me. Matter of fact, I'm going to leave you. Right? That's how he is. It says, for a long time, Yasharal was without a true Elohim and a teaching priest and without law, the Torah. You know what that means? He's like, for a long time, they was away from Yahuwah. It was like, I ain't coming nowhere near y'all. He said, for a long time, they've been without him. He's like, yeah, you've been without him. You've been without Yahuwah for a long time. And you know what happens after that? And when in their distress, they turned to Yahuwah. They returned to Yahuwah, the Elohim of Yasharal, and sought him. He was found by them. He said, Yahuwah, he said, return to me and I'll return to you. He said, for a long time, you've been without a teacher. You've been without a whole bunch of stuff, ain't you? I know you've been without a lot of things. You ain't known a lot of things either. But that's how he works. He said, you leave me, I'm going to leave you. You forsake me, I forsake you. And that's the whole point. Right, so this is the book of, this is the book of Yirmiyahu chapter 6, Yirmiyahu chapter 6, Jeremiah chapter 6, Jeremiah chapter 6 and verse 1. Jeremiah chapter 6 and verse 1. And it says right here, flee for safety, O people of Benjamin, from the midst of Jerusalem. Blow the Turah in Tekoa and raise a signal in Bel Hakaram, for disaster looms out of the north and great destruction. He's like, great destruction. The lovely and delicate bread I will destroy. The daughter of Saul. He's like, why he gonna do all that? Because Yahuwah said, I change not. He said, I'm gonna destroy you. He said, I'll destroy you. You know why he gonna do that? Shepherds with their flocks shall come against her, and they shall pitch their tents around her, and they shall pasture each in his place. Prepare war against her, arise, and let us attack at noon. You say, imagine when you're getting ready to pray. You know how people like to pray when the noontime comes? And then what he says, woe to us, for the day declines, for the shadow of evening lengthens. Right? He's like, it's lengthening. Evening, you know, guess what we're heading into? The longest night. because it's lengthening. The evening is now lengthening longer and longer and longer and longer. It's getting long. Eventually, it's going to get to the longest night. And guess what? Arise and let us attack by night and destroy her palaces. Right? You see, your body, that's what bodies means. It means your body's a temple. Your house is a palace. But guess what it says? For thus says Yahuwah of hosts, cut down her trees. Cast up a siege mount against Jerusalem. This is the city that must be punished. Now you see why we got all these afflictions. You get all these afflictions, you get all these things happen for correction, for you can remember Yahuwah's mercies renews every single morning. You get all these afflictions that happen to you. You got to be punished, like he said. Yahuwah punishes us because we are stubborn people, right? Even after Yahushua died, rose and ascended, rode upon the wings and walked on water, healed the sick, raised the dead. One understanding, he ride on the wind, he darkened the sun at noontime, fulfilled even the beginning and the first day. But guess what? People still the same people. Still the same. The city that must be punished. There is nothing but oppression within her. That's all it is. Oppressing the poor, the needy, the fatherless, the people without male figures. You're oppressing everybody. He said, everything price is high and you still charge it, right? Everybody being oppressed. Ain't nothing given out free anymore. Everybody being oppressed. As we, it says, verse 7 says, as well as a well keeps its water fresh, so she keeps fresh her evil. He's like, man, you fresh on the inside, right? You know, he said you keep fresh your evil. You know that clear water. You ever been by the river and you see the water all the way down to the bottom? He said, man, look at that water. That water's so clear. And he said, you know what? He said, that's how fresh your evil is. It looked good though. He said, so she keeps fresh her evil. Violence and destruction are heard within her. So you can see within our heart and our mind. Like even though he said, out of your belly shall flow rivers of living water, like pure water. But he said, you have fresh, pure evil coming out of you. Inside of your heart and your mind, and it's destructive, and it's evil. And it says, sickness and wounds are ever before me. Why? Because all this stuff comes from within. I assure you, the things that happen on the outside of your body all deals with what you put in your body. And what comes out of your body are the effects of things that you put in your body that are good for you. Usually when people are getting injected and getting things that's within themselves or putting things in their body that are disgusting to them, but they're actually healing their body, they're going to emit things that are evil outside the body. That's how you know that people have things within themselves that are emitting outside the body, outside of themselves. They say certain things, they do certain things, they act a certain way. Why? Because the things that are imputing inside of them, the actual food that they're taking in, is causing these things to manifest on the outside by the things that they're intaking. And by intaking the bar of Yahuwah, it manifests on the outside as erratic behavior. But it's actually the evil that's coming out of them in a purification stage. So the evil that you see manifest inside of people on the outward man, as the bar is being imputed, is not something you should be running away from and casting away and disregarding, because that is just the effect of the herbs, the actual things that they need inside of them manifesting. That's all it is. It's just like when you drink some cayenne pepper and next you know, or you drink some black seed oil and next you know all the mucus start coming out of your body. It's all evil. Or you drink a green, or you put like cilantro, spinach, and you put dandelion, and you do all these things inside of a bitter cup with some lemon, and you drink it. 30 minutes later, you got all these things that appear on your body. That's just the evil inside of your body that comes outside on your skin. The very same thing when the bar comes in, and you see these outbursts and all these crazy things, but that's just the evil coming out. That's all it is. But it says right here, I don't know why I'm saying this. It says, verse 8 says, be warned, O Jerusalem, lest I turn from you in disgust. lest I make you a desolation and uninhabited land. So that's what Yahuwah will do to us. He said, the abomination that makes desolation. Do you have any abominations within yourself that he'll make you desolate, that he'll destroy you? Right. Verse 9 says, thus says Yahuwah of hosts, they shall glean thoroughly as the vine, the remnant of Yasharal, like a grape gatherer passes your hand again over its branches. When we gather grapes in the summertime, he said the muscadine grapes out now, but the purple ones and the green ones, right? They back out, right? The harvest is in. You can eat plenty of them right now. It says, verse 10 says, to whom shall I speak and give warning? So we are asking ourselves these questions. He said, to whom will I speak? Man or woman, male and female. That they may hear, that you may shema. Behold, their ears are uncircumcised. You know, you got uncircumcised ears, which means you got a big foreskin over your ear. You ever seen the show where they had overgrowth on your ear? They give these people these elixirs, and next you know, their ears start mutating, and they get all these different, it's accelerated and make their ear grow. And then it covers their ears, their mouth, and their eyes, and they die, right? He said, your ears are uncircumcised. And he said, circumcise the foreskin of your ears. Right? That's exactly what people need to do. Circumcise the foreskin of your ears. You know what happens after that? They cannot listen. You need to circumcise the foreskin of your ears. Because the foreskin of your ears don't want to take in, you know how somebody close their mouth? Because you know in the right ear you hear Yahuwah's voice. You know you don't want to hear that the bar that's going to go inside, so you close your ear. You foreskin your ear up so you can't go in, so the evil can't manifest on the outside, so you can't be purified. He says, behold, their ears are uncircumcised. They cannot listen. Behold, the word of Yahuwah is to them an object of scorn. They take no pleasure in it. He said, no pleasure. Now, it's just like any other pleasure acts that people do. Intercourse, right? Sexual intercourse, eating your favorite food, all these things that people take pleasure in this life. Now he said, remember the created in the days of your youth, while the evil day draws is not here. For that day you're going to come, you have no pleasure in this life anymore. Right? Verse 11 says, therefore I am full of wrath of Yahuwah. I am weary to hold it in, because nobody listening. You ever had a male figure talk to a female figure and they ain't listening? And then they close, they circumcise, their ear is uncircumcised and they don't want to listen. And then the man just be like, oh, so y'all ain't listening. And then you know what he says? Therefore I am full of the wrath of Yahuwah. So that righteous man getting the full wrath of Yahuwah on you. He be like, man, what's wrong with you? Therefore I am full of the wrath of Yahuwah. I am weary of holding it in, because some people can't hold it in that long. He be like, man, I can't hold it in like that. You know, people say, I'm going to hold it in. He be like, when you got the wrath of Yahuwah on the inside, it's like, you can't even hold it in anymore. Why? Because when people are not hearing instructions, then they get all erratic behavior, and then Satan comes, find a way in, and then you know what happens after that? Satan in the camp, Satan in the house, Satan everywhere. Then that's extra work that you got to do to get Satan out. And usually it ain't going to happen overnight. Then you got to pinpoint where he came in at, what happened. You got to do all these things, and you got to revamp the whole thing and redo your whole, how you say, like cybersecurity. You know how they do? And get what it says. Verse 11 says, therefore I am full of the wrath of Yahuwah, and I am weary of holding it in. Pour it out upon the children in the street, and upon the gatherings of the young men. Now he's saying, you know how you go after your children? You know how when your children do something that's evil, and then now you're like, they're not listening to me. I said, get in this house. I said, I got a meeting right now. You need to get in. And they ain't listening to you. And then the wrath of Yahuwah come, they got uncircumcised ears, and next thing you know, you run out in the street, you chasing them down the street, then you dragging them in the house. And then the wrath of Yahuwah on you, and then you be like, man, I should have just came in when he first said. It's the same thing when he comes to his children. It's the same thing he does to us. Right? He gonna find a way to get you back in. People saying, oh, I'm gonna run away. He's like, I'm gonna get you back. He said, I'm gonna find you. He said, I'm gonna find you. You were like, I'm gonna get you. I'm gonna find you behind. He said, you're gonna find your way right back. He'd be like, man, how did I get back here? He said, you know what? I'm gonna find you. And upon the gathering of the young men also, both husband and wife shall be taken, the elderly and the very aged. You don't care how old you are, husband, wife, title. He said, y'all want to run away, y'all want to do your own things. Yahuwah's like, I'm going to find my way, but you're going to find your way back. He said, you're going to be afflicted, and the wrath of Yahuwah on all of y'all. You can say, why he going to do that? Because Yahuwah will be with you while you be with him. But if you forsake him, he forsake you, and his wrath will be upon you. Verse 12 says, their houses shall be turned over to others. He said, that's what happens. Then you start losing your house. You're like, man, why am I losing my house? Because both husband and wife will be taken in the elderly and the very age because of the wrath of Yahuwah on you, because of all the erratic behavior. So that's why he's saying, I might take your house, and I'm gonna give it to somebody else who actually are appreciative and who actually like the things that I do for them, because Yahuwah will be with you while you be with him. But if you forsake him, he forsake you. You know what else he says? Shall be turned to others, their fields and their wives together. He said, then I'll give your wives over to somebody else. You know, he said, I'll take your house and everything you got, and your wife will go be with somebody else, and you'll see how I feel when you leave me. That's how Yahuwah works. So you're gonna see all your stuff. You're gonna see your husband go be with somebody else while you over here doing nothing. Or you're gonna see your wife over there with somebody else. I'm gonna take your house away, take everything you got. You're gonna see your wife over there doing something, and you're gonna be sitting there by yourself. Because you left me. It says right here, for I will stretch out my hand against the inhabitants of the land, declares Yahuwah of hosts. Right now you see what happened to Dawid. Like we were thinking like, oh yeah, you know, David, he lost it. He had to get the ephah and all that stuff. And Dawid and all the people lost their wives and their children. And they lost all their possessions. And they came back. They were crying and weeping and all that. That's because they left Yahuwah. That's what happens. When you start to do things opposite of what Yahuwah says, then that's what happens. You start taking losses. Then you got to ask Yahuwah, can I please have it back? Verse 13, for the least to the greatest of them, everyone is greedy of unjust gains. Everybody's stomping on each other. They trample on each other. Beware the leaven of the Pharisees. And guess what it says? And from the Nabi to the priest deals falsely. They have healed the wounds of my people lightly, saying shalom, shalom, when there is no shalom. Soundness, right? But that's the whole point. Right, going to the book of This is the book of 1 Corinthians, chapter 7. 1 Corinthians. 1 Corinthians chapter 7 and verse 1. 1 Corinthians chapter 7 and verse 1. It says, now concerning the matters about which you wrote. Right? He wrote this, Corinthian wrote Shaul, who had the Ruach from Jerusalem, who was taught by the feet of Gamaliel, right? Who knew the perfect law, the Torah, who grew up in the actual customs and traditions of Yasharal and Yehuda from Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, from the time they came out of Mizraim. You know, who was actually underneath people who actually knew the Torah and actually did it. Now concerning the matters about which I wrote, it is good for a man not to have sexual relations with a woman, right? You know, he's talking about something that when it comes to abstaining from the marriage bed. He ain't talking about never. Because we have laws in the Torah where people exchange, and he says abstain from the marriage bed. But it says right here, but because of temptation to sexual immoral, each man should have his own wife, and each woman should have her own husband. Why? Because if you don't, then you have, like you say, fornication demons running around. Shadim. You have Ataf, Asalbi, you have all types of beings. This Dirax. You have poverty demons running around your house. You have all types of things. But guess what it says? You're skipping over. skipping over to verse 8. Skipping over to verse 8. To the unmarried and the widows, I say that it is good for them to remain single. Why would he say that? As I am. He said, I'm single. He's saying, I'm abstaining like everybody else. They would say this, but that's what he's doing. But if they cannot exercise self-control, they should marry. Why? Because for it is better to marry than to burn. Because during this time, everybody was under a severe persecution. Severe persecution that was going on. Verse 10 says, to the married, I give you this charge. Not I, they put parentheses, but Yahuwah. But I'm going to say it without the parentheses. To the married, I give this charge. The wife should not separate from her husband. Why? Because Yahuwah said that Yahuwah be with you while you be with him. But if you forsake him, he will forsake you. He will. But if she does, right? But it says, but if she does, in parentheses, it says, but if she does, she should remain unmarried or else be reconciled to her husband, right? And the husband should not divorce his wife, right? He said you shouldn't. Or Yahuwah's wrath gonna be on you. Right? Because he's trying to save people. Because Yahuwah said, I am Yahuwah, I change not. Husband, wife, old and young. But guess what it says? To the rest I say, not I, it says I, not Yahuwah, right? That's what it says. That if any brother has a wife who is an unbeliever and she consents to live with him, he should not divorce her, right? So when a woman leaves, it ain't on the man. It's just like when Yahuwah said, when you leave me, he said, return to me and I'll return to you. It ain't got nothing to do with the man. The woman has to make that decision. Once she leaves, this is her decision to do what she's going to do. That's the whole point. Responsibility goes to an individual person to make a decision based upon their own life. And whatever decision you make, you have to live with it. And if it's the wrong decision, then you have to live with the punishments that come with it. Right? And that's the thing that people don't want to live with, the punishments that come with it. They want all the punishment to be on the other person. But in actuality, the punishment going to be whatever decision you make. It says, to the rest I say, not Yahuwah, that if any brother have a wife who is an unbeliever and she consents to live with him, he should not divorce her. You say you shouldn't divorce nobody. You shouldn't put nobody away. Actually, that's the whole point of Yahuwah even bringing marriages together. David, you look at some of these people, Esau didn't even put away his wives. Yaakov made a covenant with Laban. He said he ain't put away his either. Neither did Yitzhak. Adam, right? Many examples, but anyway. But it says right here, if any woman has a husband who is an unbeliever and he consents to live with her, she should not divorce him. Why? Because usually when people start to believe different things, like it becomes like a conflict, right? Especially with goyim, because these are all goyim type behaviors. Goyim struggle with this. They struggle with this type of understanding. They struggle with it, and you see it today. They're erratic all over the place. There's so many different people just jumping all over the place. They're erratic. It shouldn't be like with Yasharal. We should be more self-controlled. Matter of fact, you should be more self-controlled to where one should be able to understand the Torah on the level that they need to. And understand that the fruits of the Ruach, that patience that people don't have, and that gentleness that people have lost, they need to attain it back. And that compassion and mercy needs to come back in the image and likeness of Yahuwah. The goyim are all over the place. And then when people take on their practices, and then you get all over the place. And then you start to become like them. That's why they're writing. They're only writing to the wise person that gives them some advice on the things that they've been doing. Because these are all the things that they do. It says, for the unbelieving husband is made Qhdsh because of his wife. Why? Because if the woman believes, with the Goyim type practices, she said you made Qahalath by her belief. In her prayer, in her fasting, in her hair in the closet, you know how they say, in her room praying. But guess what happens? And the unbelieving wife is made Qahalath because of her husband, because he's praying, he's doing the things he's supposed to do, and he's covering her, right? Amazingly, ain't that what your code did to Bilhah when she got defiled by Reuben? He still kept her in the house, didn't he? And he still prayed for her. And he still prayed for his son. And he still kept her in the house and took care of her. That's the same thing. He's trying to get people to understand this. Because people don't get it. Because Yahuwah said, you return to me, I return to you. Because Yahuwah would do the same thing for you. But you know what people say? I don't need to do that. That's just the whole point. That's the whole, you got to understand it in its totality, not just in what I want to do. Because remember, anytime we make a decision, you got to make it with everything you know, not just a little bit. The emotion and feeling of that little bit of time. Because you don't make it with everything you know, then you know what happens is it becomes like your decision is limited. And you're not weighing in everything, right? The effects, what it will have on other people and generations and other people's feelings and what they will think of you and other people will think and what other people will say and the losses you're going to take, right? You got to think about that. How the son's going to feel when they leave their mother, and I cast their mother out, and she had 2 of my children. And I cast her mother out. How the 2 sons going to look at me? Think about it. He cast out Bilhah, right? I got to think about that. I got to think about all the people that's going to, see what I'm saying? Like, people don't, you got to weigh it in. That's the same thing when a woman divorces her husband. Like, you got to weigh everything in. So people going to say things about me. People going to say things about him. The person going to be without this, and then this person, they going to cost them money. It costs like $10,000 to get a lawyer, and then you got to cost another $15,000 to move across the country. And you got to make another $20,000 to do that. Then you got to suffer all the things, and you got to force yourself not to say anything about them negative. And then you got to do all these other things. You got to create all these other stupid things, right? Then you force yourself into all these different erratic behaviors and mindsets. And then Satan having a field day. He's shooting three-pointers across half court and making every single one of them on your life. And then come boast in your face after he do it. Think about it. See, because people don't weigh that. It's just like when David committed adultery with Bathsheba. You think Abigail and other women ain't know? Let me guess. Oh yeah, he went ahead and went with Bathsheba and we ain't know about it. Yeah, right. And then once you think, we're going to put David away. Dawid. Why? Because he was an unbeliever in that situation. How you say, what you call unbeliever? You went from a believer to an unbeliever. And then you know what happened after that? Then you had to weigh the whole thing. The whole kingdom before they start making decisions based upon their feelings. You know how it is. The world is, but remember, this is Corinthians. Right? This is Corinthians. Right? Corinth. From the unbelieving husband is made Qahalath because of his wife, and the unbelieving wife is made Qahalath because of her husband. Why? So you say, well, why did Yahuwah forgive David? You think it was just all about Dawid and the wife and he had a child and all that? No, it's because the women he had were praying. Because the women still stayed in their state. That's the only reason. That's the only reason. Sounds crazy, but, well, in this world it sounds crazy, but that's just how people who really actually believe this thing did. Right? But at the same time, we keep moving. But it says, and the unbelieving wife is made Qahalath because of her husband. Otherwise, your children will be unclean. But as it is, they are Qahalath. Right? So you got to think about it. The children gonna be unclean. Why? Because now you ain't got nobody who know anything, right? Your husband done did this crazy dinner. He can't be, man, be quiet. You know how it is? Go be quiet by yourself somewhere. Why? Because you don't be able to say nothing to nobody. who gonna be the one to pick up and do something? The woman got to do it. He's like, just be quiet, right? Sometimes you just gotta be quiet. Shut up. Sometimes you just gotta go. He said, because David had to shut up. You think, oh yeah, David just went back even being king and all that stuff. That way, I think he did that. He had to go shut up somewhere, right? You know how he say, shut up. Cast the log out your own now, right? You know how it is. Like you got to go do all that, and you don't know how long they're gonna take. You might write a whole book. You know how people say they write a book on their life. You ever seen people writing a book on their life, all the sins they committed? Like you see these celebrities, everybody's trying to write books and stuff because they talk about all the stuff they did. Because that's the part of this whole thing. You can't just make decisions based upon what you think, how you feel. You got to think about everything, right? And you got to learn that though. It takes time. That's like Yusuf had to learn to hide his brother's sins, right? Everybody got to learn it over time, man. It's not something you learn overnight. It says right here, but if the unbelieving partner separates, let it be so. He's like, so they want to leave and they want to go and do what they want to do. Just understand. Yahuwah, like you be with me, as long as you be with me, I'm with you. Just like the woman. If you want to be with me, as long as you be with me. But if you forsake me, I'll forsake you, right? The very same thing when it comes to a man. Yahuwah be with you while you be with him. But you forsake him, man, I don't want nothing to do with it. But if you return to me, I'll return to you. Right, so he says, so it's just the very same thing. Like when a man, how you say, a male gets married and then the woman leaves, right? And she want to go be with somebody else, then what you gonna do? You're gonna be saying, baby, 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 right? You're gonna be singing all these songs? No, it's just like, hey, you can't do anything about it. But just know if a husband leave a woman that believes, just understand, you go be with somebody else, just understand what you just did. You just gave all your power away. You ain't got no power no more. He like, I ain't coming nowhere near you. But if you return back to Yahuwah, then that's a whole different subject. But at the same time, that has nothing to do with me. That's on you. You know how Yahuwah is. Right? People don't know how Yahuwah is, but I'm going to show you. But this is the whole point, right? And people say, prove your love. You don't need nobody to prove their love to you when they go out and they go be with somebody else after you serving Yahuwah and somebody go do something. You don't need to prove nothing to them. Right? You say, I got something to prove to you. I got nothing to prove. He said, prove what? There is nothing to prove, right? So this is the book of Deuteronomy, Dabarim. This is the book of Dabarim. Deuteronomy chapter 28, Deuteronomy chapter 20, Dabarim chapter 20 and verse 1. Dabarim chapter 20 and verse 1. Dabarim chapter 20 and verse 1. Deuteronomy chapter 20 verse 1. And when you go out to war against your enemies and see horses and chariots and armies and larger than your own, you should not be afraid of them. For Yahuwah, your Elohim, is with you, who brought you out of the land of Mizraim. And when you draw near the battle, the priest shall come forward and speak to the people and shall say to them, Hear, O Yasharal, today you are drawing near against the battle, against your enemy. You know how people have a pep talk? You know how you have a pep talk? You're like, man, I'm going to give people some emotional, like a speech that gives them some encouragement, right? You know how people say, give me some encouragement in the midst of my trials and in my battles and things I have to deal with in myself. Give me some encouragement. Right, so guess what he did? Let not your heart faint. That's what people need to say to each other. That's what a man should say to his brother. That's what a sister should say to her sister. That's what a man should say to his sister or brother or husband or wife or children or family or mother or gray hair. He said you should say this. Let not your heart faint. Because you know your heart faint, you know what Satan gonna do. The word you're taking out of your mind, turn you into an akash. Do not fear or panic, or be in dread of them. That's what people think about their battles that they face in their life. They be afraid of it. They be afraid of it. He said, don't let your heart faint. And it says, for Yahuwah, your Elohim, is he who goes with you. That's what you got to believe. Now you see why he said, Yahuwah will be with you while you be with him, but if you forsake him, he will forsake you. And he will go with you. It's just like we talked about unbelieving wife, unbelieving husband, unbelieving husband leave. It's like, Yahuwah ain't with you, he with me. Unbelieving wife leave, Yahuwah ain't with you, he with me. Let not your heart faint. So they fainted. That's one reason they left. That's the only reason people leave. It get too hard. It says, for Yahuwah your Elohim is he who goes with you to fight for you against your enemies and give you the victory. So you be thinking like, oh, my enemies are in my own household. But in actuality, you need to start thinking about Yahuwah when your enemies in your household or in your life, or somebody may turn into an enemy for a day. Right? So how are you got to believe that Yahuwah with you so it don't go for a week, for a year, for 5 years, for 7 years, for 20 years. You got to believe that Yahuwah with you so the battle be done that day. The battle is won that day. Because everybody may not be in their full strength that day. You know, I said the power level went down, and then Satan jumped inside of them, and then guess what happens to you? Or that evil demon that's on the inside of people, or him or her, husband or wife, and then guess what happened? The demons they fighting against, they start rising up, and that's what you got to do. Let not your heart faint. Let not your heart faint. Do not dread or be in fear of them. And you have to believe that Yahuwah is with you to win the battle that day. Let's see how long. How long? Do not fear or panic or be in dread of them. For Yahuwah, your Elohim, it is he who goes with you to fight for you against your enemies and give you the victory. Then the officers shall speak to the people, right? And he give you double, how you say? Double encouragement. Saying, is there any man who has built a house and has not dedicated it? Let him go back to his house, lest he die in the battle and another man dedicate it. All right, so you look at all the things you own. He said, man, I done built a house. I got a new house, and man, I dedicated it. And guess what? Let him go back to his house, and lest he die in the battle, another man dedicated. So now you can't even think about your possessions when you're in the midst of your battles. And the things you got in your life. Because you may be suffering some loss. But even at the same time, you can't be afraid to lose or to not pay attention to your daily tasks or things you already had. You know how people have battles in their life and situations, and they doing something in their life. And then you know what, they're doing something in their life, but then at the same time, and it's very, very important, I'm trying to finish it, or I just completed it, man, I just want to get a break. He said, you can't even think about that when you have your battles in your life. You can't even think about that. You got to think about winning the battle. You got to think about that. When these things come in your life, you can't even think about that. You know how people say, he that forsaken mother, father, sister, brother, houses for my name's sake. When these battles come in your life, you can't be, you can't be thinking about all the things. You got to be thinking about the things around you and the people you're dealing with. But you know what it also says? And it says, verse 6 says, and is there any man who has planted a vineyard and has not enjoyed its fruits? Let him go back to his house, lest he die in the battle and another man enjoy its fruit, right? That's what we be thinking about. You be thinking about, man, I ain't gonna enjoy my fruit. Somebody else gonna eat my fruit. They're gonna be able to enjoy everything in life except me. You can't even think like that. I put all that work in to plant all that stuff, and you know what? Somebody else gonna eat the fruit. So let me go eat the fruit. You can't even think about that when these battles and situations and storms and come into your life. You can't even think about that. Verse 7 says, and is there any man who has betrothed a wife and has not taken her, and he ain't been with her, he ain't slept with her, let him go back to his house lest he die in battle and another man take care, right? So you can't even think about the relationships you got when these battles come in your life. Because you can't. You know how you ever been in the soldier? They say we used to go to camp, training camp. They used to be like, yeah, Jody got your wife. You ain't got to worry about it no more, right? You in training camp right now. You know how they say? That's what they used to tell us. But that's the whole point. But it said right here, and there, if any man who is fearful and faint-hearted, it says, and the officer shall speak further to the people, and if any man who is fearful and faint-hearted, let him go back to his house. He said, man, go back to your house. He said, you fearful. You faint-hearted. Lest he make the heart of his fellows melt like his own. He said, man, you're going to make everybody else faint. And he said, melt. Right, because you got these battles in your life. Right, because even the way your attitude in the midst of your battles, you can cause other people to lose their confidence. That's what happens. You can cause other people to lose their confidence. That's what happens. You can have your whole household lose their confidence. Get what it says. And when the officers have finished speaking to the people, then the commanders shall appoint at the head of the people. Right. So all this is a part of it. Right. Right. So this is a Nazarene actually the Shalakim. This is the Nazarene actually the Shalakim. Nazarene actually the Shalakim. Recommendations of Clement, chapter 6. And it says right here, then let us consider carefully in the next place what reason we have for loving our parents. For this cause it is said we love them, because they seem to be the authors of our life. But our parents are not the authors of our life, but means of it. For they do not bestow life, but afford the means of our entering into this life. While the one and the sole author of life is Yahuwah. If therefore we would love the author of our life, let us know that it is he that is to be loved. Right? So look at everything that we have in this life and the things that we own, the things that we adore. But it says right here, but then it is said, we cannot know him, but them we know and hold in affection. Be it so. You cannot know what Elohim is, but you can very easily know what Elohim is not. For how can any man fail to know that wood or stone or brass or any such matter is not Elohim? But if you will not give your mind to consider the things that you might easily apprehend, it is certain that you are hindered in the knowledge of Yahuwah Elohim. Right, so we look at Yahuwah as the author of life. When he say, okay, so what about wood and stone and brass and such things? You think these things are the author of life. You think your parents are the author of life. But he's like, no, Yahuwah is the author of life. And then he says, and if you go outside of that understanding and belief, then he says, it is certain that you are hindered in the knowledge of Elohim. He said, you are hindered. Not by impossibility, but by indulgence. For if you had wanted it, or wished it, even from these useless images, you might have been set on the way of understanding. He said you might actually be on your way. Right? But at the same time, right, this is the book of Matthew Yahu. This is the book of Matthew Yahu. This is the book of Matthew Yahu. This is the book of Matthew Yahu, chapter 10 and verse 34. This is the book of Matthew Yahu, chapter 10, verse 34. Actually, yeah, let's go here. It says, do not think that I have come to bring peace on earth. Right? So why would he say that? Because people say, yeah, I read, he ain't come to bring no peace. He ain't bring no shalom. He said the meek, the Aydah gonna delight themselves in shalom, right? So what do you mean by that? He ain't gonna bring no peace, right? It says, I have not come to bring peace but a sword. So who are you bringing the sword against? That's the question that you got to ask yourself. Because if you don't, you're going to misinterpret what he's saying, right? Because that's the whole point. Because, right, this is the book of Proverbs. Right, the book of Proverbs. Book of Proverbs. Go to chapter, I think it's chapter 5. No, 25. You go to Proverbs chapter 25, verse 17. It says, let your foot be seldom in your neighbor's house, lest he have his fill of you and hate you. Right? Like when you go on he said, when you go on your neighbor's house, he said you need to be very careful. Right? You don't want nobody to start hating you for no reason, but your behavior in your neighbor's house. But it said right here, a man who bears false witness against his neighbor is like a war club, or a sword, or a sharp arrow. So when you bear false witness against your neighbor, understand that's fighting words. You already know that's fighting words. You just pulled out a sword. You know how you just pull out your war club. Your war club, your sword, and your arrows. You know how the native indigenous people got killed by those roundhouse cannonballs and all these things with the Tartarian forts and everything. Right? He said, man, you just pulled out your sword, your arrow, and your club. He's like, man, you just threatened me. You know how people say, I'm gonna fight. You just threatened me. You just threatened my life. Because what's worse than death? The slander of a city. So you just gave false witness. He's like, hold up. You just pulled out a sword against me. Right? Because people don't be thinking about that. Because when you do these things, it's like, hold up. Right? This is the book of Psalms, chapter 7. Psalms, chapter 7, verse 8. Psalms, we're going to set the record straight. You know how people say, set the record straight. Psalms, chapter 7, verse 8. Tehillim, chapter 7, verse 8. Yahuwah judges the people. Judge me, O Yahuwah, according to my righteousness and according to the integrity that is in me. That's what we want. Right? You don't want evil and poisonous rivers flowing through your body. It's within you. But guess what it says? Let the evil of the wicked come to an end. Right? That's what we're trying to do. And it says, and may you establish the righteous, you who test the minds and hearts, O righteous Elohim. So he testing them. You know what we do? We start testing him. So you testing me. Right? You testing me. Right? But it said right here, my shield is with Elohim who saves the upright in heart and leg, right? In their mind. Elohim is the righteous judge. So he's the judge, right? And Elohim who feels indignation every day. He said, man, I feel. You know how he said, I got feelings. Right? I got feelings too. Feelings. You know how I say? He got feelings too. I'm emotional. Right? You done left. You know how Yahuwah is? You done left. He gone. Yahuwah's like, you gone. So Yahuwah is feeling a certain way. You know how you got feelings too? So you think about you bear false witness, and you're like, man, you just pulled a sword on me. Imagine you just walking down the street, somebody bear false witness. That's like fighting words. It's like round one, fight. Right? You just automatically just created Street Fighter 2. Right? Street Fighter, right? Right in the street. You just said it's a lie. So what do you think the person thinking about? Verse 12 says, if a man does not repent, Elohim will whet his sword. Now you see why Yahuwah say, I ain't come to bring peace on earth. I can't bring a sword. You know why? Because they ain't repent. That's why he ain't bring. He said, you think I'm coming to bring peace to your house? Nah, I'm not coming to bring peace. Because one of y'all bear false witness. One of y'all committed some adultery. One of y'all slandered. Another person in here then did something else that's evil, right? And slept with his neighbor's wife, or stole something from the store. You know, I think about how you have children that go out and steal, and then they come back to your house and then they bring the actual sword to your house. You be like, man, you just brought the sword to my house. Because you done stole or you done did something to somebody else out there, and then they come and do a drive-by shooting in your whole house. And you be like, man, hold up, I didn't do nothing wrong. But in actuality, you were like, I traced this all the way back to your house. And being that I traced this all the way back to your house, it's your house that's actually causing all the problems. And it says, he has been ready his bow, right? So now, see, he said, I got my sword, I got my bow now. Because you ain't repent. Verse 13, he has prepared for him his deadly weapons, making his arrows fiery shafts, right? Remember we said I just talked about bringing that fire to the earth, that purifying water. He said, I'm here now. Behold, the wicked man conceives evil and is pregnant with mischief and gives birth to lies. And now you see why. Going back to Matthew chapter 10. Matthew chapter 10. Right? Matthew chapter 10. Yeah. Chapter 10, verse 34. Matthew chapter 10, verse 34. It says, do not think that I have come to bring peace, shalom, to the earth. Why? You know why he's not? Because everybody bearing false witness. Everybody slandering and gossiping. Everybody murdering, committing adultery, fornication, doing all these things they ain't supposed to be doing. People sneaking out the house, creeping. Well, I creep, right? Going outside the house, right? Doing all types of stuff, right? Doing all types of things outside. Got no sense. So Yahushua like, I ain't gonna bring no peace. So y'all got the swords in your hand. So you think I'm not gonna show up with my sword? I got my sword too. I got my sword, I got my club, I got my arrow too. So therefore, I'm fighting fire with fire. You got yours, I got mine. So what y'all want to do? Because I did an investigation and I traced it back to your house. So therefore, I ain't coming to bring no peace. And it says, do not think that I have come to bring peace, shalom, to the earth. I have not come to bring peace, but a sword. I have come to set a man against his father. He's like, look at here. Once you found out what your son did, or you found out what your father did, and I'm coming to judge they behind, you're going to be like, whose side you on again? You know how Mashah said? Who on Yahuwah's side? That's what's going to happen. He says, and a daughter against her mother. He said, so once you found out what your daughter did, or you found out what your mother did, he like, whose side you on? Who on Yahuwah's side? I ain't on the side. I ain't trying to fight you. You got your sword, your club, and your arrow. I know everybody been bearing false witness, doing all these things. So I'm over here with you, Yahushua Mashiach. I understand where you're coming from. You know how people say, I understand where you're coming from. You understand? All right, I understand, right? And it says right here, and it says, and a daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. He's like, yeah, your son married your daughter-in-law. Your son married, the mother-in-law. I thought your mother-in-law loved your daughter-in-law, but then your daughter-in-law committed adultery on your son, and then now the daughter-in-law, the mother-in-law don't like the son and the daughter-in-law, and then the daughter-in-law, the mother-in-law done slept with the husband that married the daughter-in-law. Right? There's all types of stuff. He like, I come to really bring some swords in here. You know what else happened? And a person's enemies be those of his own household. They're going to find out what y'all did. You're going to find out what you did. That's the whole point. He's like, man, I believe in Yahuwah. We do everything he says, and then you're doing something opposite. So you know, say, man, there's Satan in the house, right? He said, a man's enemy can be his own household. And whoever loves, oh, here we go. And whoever loves father or mother more than me is not worthy of me. He's like, so He's like, you ain't worthy of me. And whoever loves son and daughter more than me is not worthy of me. He said, I see that you're void of understanding. Yahuwah's understanding. I think you're hindered in the understanding of Yahuwah. And whoever does not take up his cross and follow me is not worthy of me. Because that's the whole point. Because remember, he said he's gonna do what to the Aydah? He's gonna allow them to light in the abundance of peace. But in order to get them to the abundance of soundness and speak and peace and quietness, he has to reveal everything that everybody has done. That's when we'll get everybody to go in their room and go seek Yahuwah and go be in sackcloth and ashes and repent and being quiet. That's the only way. I gotta literally just show everybody what they've done. And guess what happens? Verse 40 says, whosoever receives you receives me. And whosoever receives me receives him who sent me. The one who receives a Nabi because he is a Nabi will receive a Nabi reward. And the one who receives a righteous person because he is a righteous person will receive a righteous person's reward. Verse 42, and whosoever gives one of these little ones even a cup of water because he is a disciple. Oh, so who you with? Truly I say to you, you will by no means lose your reward. Right? Because this is different between finding out what somebody did and then you say, okay, man, so what y'all do? That's the whole point. Because that's the whole point, right? Because if we, right, they're going to the book of Deuteronomy, actually going to book of Deuteronomy, chapter 21 and 9. Book of Deuteronomy 21 and 9. It says, so shall you purge the guilt of innocent blood from your midst when you do what is right in the sight of Yahuwah. Get what it says. Yeah, that's all I want. But it says, go to verse 10. It says, when you go out to war against your enemies, and it says, and Yahuwah, your Elohim, gives them into your hand, and you take them captive, and you see among them the captives a beautiful woman, and you desire to take her to be your wife, and you bring her home to your house, she shall shave her head and pare her nails, and she shall take off the clothes in which she was captured, and shall remain in your house and lament her father and her mother a full month. Why would you do that? It said lament for her father and mother a full month. I mean, that's what it says. And after that, you may go into her and be her husband, and she shall be your wife. Why? But if you no longer delight in her, you shall let her go where she wants. But you shall not sell her for money, nor shall you treat her as a slave, since you have humiliated her. He said, you humiliated her. Why? Because you made her cut her hair off and do all these things. He said, you humiliated her. And then he had to weep for her father and her mother. Why? Because they all died. But he said, you humiliated her. And people say, how do people get humiliated? You know how people get humiliated? Especially people who do evil. When you find your enemies in your own household. He said, look how the things that happen. Amazingly, Yahusha said, you love mother and father more than me, you're not with them. And then he talks about humiliating the person. And then they had to go in sackcloth and ashes and weep. And then he said after all that, after they repent and do all these things, and they still don't change, he's like, let her go her way. Let him go his way. Right? This is the whole point of this whole thing. Because when people get humiliated, right? The Deuteronomy 21 and Deuteronomy 21 and 14, that word for humiliated. We did that today. Deuteronomy 21 and 14, Deuteronomy 21 and 14, that word for humiliated, or he said you humbled her, is enough. That word for humiliated or is enough. To depress. It means what? To looking down. To humble oneself. He said you humiliated her. But that's the whole point. Because when Yahushua comes to bring the sword to your house, and he said you can't love your mother and father more than me, and he because Yahuwah consider you his enemies. Yahushua consider you his enemies, and he starts slaying people, and then one still don't want to repent, even though you humiliate yourself, did all the things that Asenath did, all these things that people do. Even David did that, Dawid, everybody did it. But then you ain't changing after all that. He's like, man, he said, let it go. Let him go. Why? Because that's the whole point of bringing the sword to your house. What do you think? What happened to his mother and father? They died. And then he said, bring it to her house. He humiliated her. And then guess what happens? And she didn't want to repent. She ain't changed. You know what? Even though you humbled her, and you found no delight in her after all that, he said, let her go. He said, it's better that you do that than to keep somebody you don't even have no delight in. Right, so this is the book of, going back to the book of, where are we going? Yeah. Right, this is a book of 2nd Baruch. I said Pseudepigrapha, Volume 1. Pseudepigrapha, Volume 1. Pseudepigrapha, Volume 1. And this is 2nd Baruch, chapter 75. 2nd Baruch, chapter 75, and verse 1. 2nd Baruch, chapter 75, and verse 1. And it says, And I answered and said, who can equal your goodness, O Yahuwah? Man, who can act like you are actually greater? They're greater than their parents. Yahuwah is the mother and father. You gonna think wood and stone and clay and idols? You think that's greater than Yahuwah? Who can equal your goodness, O Yahuwah? For it is incomprehensible. It's infinite. Or who can fathom your kind, with which is without end? Or who can understand your intelligence? Or who can narrate the thoughts of your Ruach? Or who of those born can hope to arrive at these things, apart from those to whom you are merciful and gracious? That's the only people going to arrive at. He said, arrive at what? To understand a lot of his stuff, because his mindset is like real incomprehensible. It's not just geared towards, oh, this is it. You know how people say that's proper. I'll just do that. No, it's all based upon Yahuwah is all about giving people chances. Nobody just like, oh yeah, I don't give you no more chances. Yahuwah is like, no, Yahuwah about giving people chances. People, how the world is fast paced now. If Yahushua's judgment was fast paced, as it was when they were in the wilderness, a lot of people wouldn't even be alive today. Really. But it says right here, for if you were not merciful to men, those who are under your right hand, they were not able to come to them, apart from those who are named among the famous number. But we who exist, when we know why we have come, and then subject ourselves to him who brought us out of Mizraim, we shall come again and remember those things which have passed away,
and rejoice with regard to the things which have been. But if we do not know now why we have come, and do not recognize our sovereignty of him who brought us out of from Mizraim, we will come again to ask for what which has now occurred, and shall be severely grieved because of that which has happened. Right? But why did he say all that? Going to chapter 74. Chapter 74. This is the reason why he said that. And it will happen in those days that the reapers will not become tired, and the farmers will not wear themselves out, because the products of themselves will shoot out speedily during the time that they work on them in full tranquility. He said, man, they're going to come up real fast. Why? He said, when they're working on them in full tranquility. Because when he bring you out of Mizraim, he's coming to bring you to tranquility. I'm coming to bring you to peace, shalom. But first, I got to bring a sword. You're going to start losing some stuff. Right? You see all these things that people have lost, and then you was reading in Dabarim, you see the woman lost her mother and her father. She lost her hair, all the things she had. Then she was humiliated. And then the person that took her captive didn't even find no light in her. He just let her go, right? Right, these people saying, you're going to go through some things. When you do some stuff, people have no idea. You have to. How is you going to get to the point where you're in tranquility and enough? You got to go through some things. And it said right here, for that time is the end of which is corruptible, and the beginning of that which is incorruptible. See how this corruption must put on incorruption? Tranquility and gentleness has always been a part of it, and kindness, and anah, and ainu. But Yahusha said, I ain't come to bring no peace if y'all want to do things to make me wet my sword and get my bow and my club like you got yours. Because that's the whole point. And it says, therefore, the things which were said before, will it happen in it? Therefore, it is far away from the evil things and near to those who do not die. Those are the last bright waters which have come after the last dark waters, right? He said, dark waters, right? You go in the book of Yuchanan, chapter 18, John chapter 18. John chapter 18 and verse 1. Yuchanan chapter 18 and verse 1. Yuchanan chapter 18 and verse 1. And when Yahushua had spoke these words, he went out with his disciples across the brook Kidron, where there was a garden, which he and his disciples entered. Now Judas, who betrayed him, also knew the place. And Yahushua often met there with his disciples. Right? Because, those are people who are on his side. Right? But it said right here, so Yehuda, having procured a band of soldiers, he had a bunch of soldiers. Well, when you go out to war with your enemies, he said, don't be afraid of them. Matter of fact, don't be afraid of them. Don't even let your heart faint. And if you got a house, a wife, and all these things, and all your possessions, and your fields, and all the things you own, and you're afraid, he say, go back to your house. I mean, if you love mother and father more than me, you avoid a little bit. You're hindered in your understanding. If you don't understand Anah and being humble and humiliated, then you ain't gonna understand me. Now Judas, who betrayed him, Yehuda, also knew the place. Now you see why Yahushua say, you have to be my disciple in order to understand me. Because you have to be. And he said, so Yehuda, having procured a band of soldiers and some officers, from the chief priests and the Pharisees went there with lanterns and torches and weapons because they thought he was his enemy. They thought he was their enemy. And not even knowing when they came in with them weapons, them swords, and them clubs, and them javelins, and them swords, they would pull their sword against Yahushua Mashiach. They not even knowing they false witnessing against him. And they're doing all these things. What do you think he's doing? So what do you think Yahushua think about it? He just said, I ain't come to bring peace on earth. So what you think? You think Yahushua thinking peace right now? Shalom. You think that's what he's thinking about? No. That's not what he's thinking about. And it says, torches and weapons. And then Yahushua, knowing all that will happen to him, came forward and said to them, whom do you seek? He said, don't let your heart be faint when you go out to battle. He's like, who you come to see? And he said, they answered to him, Yahushua Nazareth. Yahushua said, I am he. And Yehuda, who betrayed him, was standing with them, the false witness. How you say the plot and the scheme? The liar. You know the man that had the club and the war club and the sword in his hand. He's like, man, look at here. Y'all don't want to fight me, man. I'm really not that person you want to fight. He said, you'd be like that woman that got captured. Her mother and her father were gone. And then she got humiliated, got her hair cut off. Matter of fact, and then she got humiliated. And then they let her go, right? He said, y'all don't want to fight with me. You don't want to fight with Yahushua. You don't want to fight with this man. And he'd be like, man, I'm just going to put her away. He's like, you don't want to fight with him. You don't want to fight with him. Right? People want to fight with Yahushua. That's the wrong guy. That's Yahuwah in the flesh. He said, I am Yahuwah, I change not. Right? When he said right here, knowing that all that would happen to him, came forward and said, whom do you see? I am he. And they answered him, Yahushua Nazareth. Yahushua said to him, I am he. Yehuda, who betrayed him, was standing with him. And when Yahushua said to him, I am he, they drew back and fell to the ground. So he asked them again, whom do you see? How many times they gave a pep talk? You know, the Levite priest, he spoke some words. Let not your heart faint. When you go out to battle, believe that Elohim is with you. Then the other one said, anybody got any houses or any farmlands, you need to go back to your house. You got a wife, you got betrothed, you might die and another man may take her. Go back to your house. And you afraid and you faint-hearted, you're going to make other people faint-hearted and faint. Go back to your house. But you know what he said? And when Yahushua said to him, I am he, they drew back and fell to the ground. So they asked him again, whom do you seek? And they said, Yahushua Nazareth. And Yahushua answered, I told you I am he. He said, what you talking about? You already know who I am. I'm the best soldier you ever seen in your life. And he said, so if you seek me, let these men go back to their house. Isn't that what they did to the woman after they humiliated her, after they cut her hair off and killed her mother and her father? Matter of fact, you don't even know who they were really seeking. When they did all that and they kidnapped, they took that woman and killed her mother and her father and brought her into the house, humiliated her and then sent her away. And matter of fact, they don't even know who they were really seeking. They didn't even know who they were really seeking when Yahushua said, let these men go back to their house. Because they faint-hearted, because they were. They had other things and obligations to do, and they did. They all went right back to what they were doing. Koph, Peter, Bartholomew, all the people that people look up, they did do that. When they went to the battle, Yahushua like, man, they ain't ready for the battle. Let them go. Let them go back. They ain't ready for this. Just like David, when they crossed the brook and the other people, 200 ran, they got there, 600 ran, but only 400 went across. He was like, man, look at here. Woo. That's about far we go. He's like, yeah, I know. Go back to your house. And get what he said. This was to fulfill the word that had spoken. Oh, of those whom you gave me, I have lost not one. Oh boy, that ain't the only thing he fulfilled though. But it says, then Koph, having a sword, drew it and struck the high priest's servant and cut off his right ear. You already know it was fighting words. So you think Yahushua was the only one talking? Oh, it was fighting words now. He said, y'all come at me with swords and knives and clubs. I'm gonna grind my sword and knife. I ain't come bring no peace right now. I come bring a sword. You know, people say, you think you do something to somebody, ain't nobody gonna retaliate? You think nobody thinking about you? People still thinking about you. Then Qahalath, having a sword, drew it and struck off Hakan's his servant and cut off his right ear. And the servant's name was Malchus. So Yahusha said to Qahalath, put your sword in your sheath. Shall I not drink the cup my father has given me? So now Yahusha like, man, put your sword back in your sheath. Because it's time for me to die. And I got to put all my violent behavior away. I got to put all my emotions down. Right? I got to put all my violence away. Right? That's the whole point. He said, I could. Right? That's a whole nother subject. Right? I got to put all my violence away because I already know they pushing us hard and they want us to do something to them. And he like, I got to put all that away. I understand where you're coming from, Carl, but we got to put all this stuff away. Right? That's literally what he just said. Verse 12 says, so the band of soldiers and their captain and the officers of the Yahudim arrested Yahusha and bound him, right? Because that's the whole point. Isn't that what they did to the woman? Who they humiliated and cut her hair off and made her look like a bound and humiliated her and killed her mother and her father. And then they put her away after that. Isn't that the same woman? They took her captive. And it says, and arrested Yahusha and bound him, right? And that's the whole point. Because that's the whole point, right? That's the whole point, right? So this is the book of Yuchanan. Actually, John, going to Matthew. That's the whole point, right? Going to, right, this is a book of pseudepigrapha. Actually, this is Dead Sea Scrolls. Dead Sea Scrolls. Dead Sea Scrolls 4Q. This is Dead Sea Scrolls Volume 2. Dead 4Q 491. Dead Sea Scrolls 4Q 491. Column fragment 8 through 10. Column 1. It says, his name be joyful in the chorus, right? It's just skipping over. It says, Parach be the Elohim of Yasharal, the one who keeps mercy for his covenant and pledges and deliverance for his people. He has called those who are tottering, wondrous exploits, and has gathered the assembly of the nations for destruction with no remnant, in order to raise up in justice the melting heart. The what? The melting heart. You know how he talks about those people who are faint-hearted and who you need to go back to their house? He said, you need to go back unless you make every other man's heart melt. And Yahushua came to show you. He said, look at here. I'm going to raise you melting. Those people that the officers were like, yeah, you want to go back, you ain't going to fight. He said, those people that will have melted hearts and they went back. He said, you know what? He said, I come to raise you back up. Because the people who thought they were strong telling you, yeah, you faint-hearted, go back to your estate, your house, the place where you were going. Right? The houses and the wife that you ain't never take to be betrothed, you never took to be your wife. And go back to your houses, because you faint-hearted. He said, I come to raise back up the faint-hearted. That's why Yahushua said, you don't want to fight with me. He said, I come to raise back up the faint-hearted. The ones y'all despise. They're rejected. They're rejected and despised in your army. Yahuwah's like, I come to raise them back up. The ones that went back to go be with their betrothed. The ones that went back that was faint-hearted. The one that had a field, they had a house they just built, they ain't dedicated. Yahuwah's like, I come to raise y'all back up. The ones that thought they were strong, they weren't really that strong. He's like, they ain't never known me. Yahushua like, they ain't never known me, so they really wasn't that strong. You know how people say they thought they were strong? He said, you ain't met Yahushua first. You should have met Yahushua first, then you would have been strong. Then you would have understood what true strength really is. And guess what it says? It had a melting heart, and to open the mouth of the dumb with Elohim's marvels.
He said, then I'm going to open up those who couldn't speak. I ain't had a voice. He's like, man, my voice, man, you were mute for a long time. I ain't never say nothing. He's like, now I'm going to raise you up. Now I'm going to make you speak.
And then he says, to train the feeble hands in warfare.
Now, he said, now we're the feeble, the weak-handed, the weak man, the weak woman. I'm going to train them up in warfare. He said, I thought y'all were the warriors. They said they were warriors. He's like, nah, they weren't really the warriors.
And guess what it says? Those with knocking knees, he gives strength to stand upright. He got knocking knees. And vigor of the loins of the broken to the broken backs.
He said, I'm finna fix the broken backs.
They say, you ain't got no spine.
He said, I come to fix the broken back.
And then he says, among the poor in Ruach is the authority over a hard heart.
What?
Among the poor in Ruach is the authority of the hard heart. By the perfect ones of the path, all wicked nations shall be destroyed.
Why? Because when they see you walk by, he said their little walk is going to be destroyed. When they see you walk by, he said their little walk is going to be destroyed. What they thought was actually the walk of a warrior. Because they thought they were warriors. They thought they were true.
It says, their heroes, their gods, will not remain standing. But we are. What he says? But we are the remnant of your people.
He said, that's what we are. And so we are. Just like Ukanan said. First, I was Ukanan. And so we are.
And get what he says? Parach be your name, Elohim of mercies, who has wondrously bestowed your mercies to us during the empire of Belial,
of the worthless ones.
With all mysteries of his enmity. They have not separated us from your covenant. You have chased away from us his spirits of destruction.
He said you chased them away.
Matter of fact, when the men of his empire acted wickedly, you protected the soul of your redeemed ones.
And we talking about Obed, who birthed Chay, who birthed David. He said you returned. He said you protected the redeemed ones, the ones who give birth to your son.
And now you have raised the fallen with your strength.
He said, remember from which you have fallen, repent and do your first works over. If you don't, then you get what he said. I'm going to whet my sword against your household. Against all them people who be doing that evil in your household. And you're going to find out who your enemies are. And then you be like, man, that's my enemy. I thought you were good. He's like, that's my enemy too. He's like, yeah, you did. He's like, man, you my enemy too. He's like, you enemy of Yahushua Mashiach. You ain't repent yet. Now I'm gonna stay over here till you repent, man. I'm sorry. He's like, no personal. He's like, until you repent, that's what I'm gonna do. And when the men of the empire acted wickedly, you protected the soul of your redeemed ones. And now you have raised the fallen with your strength. But those high in stature you cut down to humiliate them. Now you see why that woman got cut down. She got cut down and humiliate her. That's what happens when Yahuwah bring his sword. He said, you better not love mother and father more than me. You better not love these things more than me. Because when I start cutting people down, he said, I humiliate you. Because that's the whole point. Anah is what one needs to stand. People say, why one person need to stand Anah, even though their hair grow back? Because then Yahuwah will have to humiliate you again. So in order to stay humble, meek, lowly, Anah, without having to do all these erratic, crazy things that we do to try to show repentance, he said, just stay Anah. Don't even lift your head, even though you're in the right. And you'll never have any problems. Right?
You'll always be in a humble state. But as soon as we start lifting our head up, it becomes light. It turns into that. For none of their heroes or gods there is a savior. For their swift ones, they fast ones, there is no escape. To their no tables you return scorn. All their useless existence will turn into nothing. We, your people, will praise your name for the deeds of your truth. Huh. Now you see why people, you say, why people gonna praise Yahuwah for Yahushua? You see what stuff he did? Yahushua said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. You see what he did? You know what people say? I don't need to do nothing. And get what it says. For your mighty deeds, we will extol. Your splendor at every moment and at the times indicated by your eternal edicts. Because you know we got edicing. You know you see you got edicts. We got 7 periods. We got 7 mu'ahs. We have some things that we do to show forth our light as the city of the sun. That's what we do. At the onset of the day and at the night, we got morning and evening sacrifices to show forth our light. That's what we do. And you know what happens after that? At the falling of the evening and at the dawn. Now, he said, maybe the dawn. You know how they say, who's the dawn? He said, you the dawn. The dawn. You the city of the sun. You the light of the world. And you know what it says? For great is the plan of your kabod, and marvelous mysteries in your heights, in order to raise from the dust for yourself and to humble those of the gods. That's the whole point. Because he's going to humble you. And now, you're going to get to that point. Whether you like it or not. Right? And get what it says. Rise up, O Elohim, O gods of gods, Elohim of Elohim, and raise with power Malak Malakim. And it says, you have placed over. May scatter from before you all the sons of darkness, and make your great light and men and firing burning dark places of abandon, and the places of destruction of Sheol may burn and consume everlasting. Right. So this is the book of Bereshith. 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 Chapter 31 and verse 1. Yaakov, this is Bereshith chapter 31, verse 1. It says, now Jacob, Yaakov, heard the sons of Laban were saying, Yaakov has taken all that was our father's, and from that was our father's he gained all his wealth. And Yaakov saw that Laban did not regard him with favor as before. That's what happens even when you're with people or in a household or any type of place. He said, you don't regard me with favor anymore like you did before. Now Yahushua said, he said, you lost the love that you had at the first. He said, you don't look at me the same way you used to do before. You don't look at the bar like that. You don't like hearing it like you did before. So he's like, you don't like me like that, do you? And he says, and then Laban, he said that before, and then Yahuwah said to Yaakov, return to the land of your fathers and your kindred, and I will be with you. He said, you know what? You need to change the scenery. He says, as long as you stay in a certain place, then you'll never change. And then he says, so Yaakov sent and called Rachel and Leah into the field where his flock was, and said to them, I see that your father does not regard me with favor as he did before. He's like, hold up. I did all this work, 7 years. I've been here more jubilees than you can even imagine. Man, I done did so much. I done made him prosper, and he know it. You know how some people say they act like they ain't do nothing for you. You know when you're cold, Laban acting like he's like, man, I did all this stuff. You act like you act like I ain't did nothing for you. And you know what he says? And now you're looking at me crazy, like I ain't do nothing for you. But the Elohim of my fathers has been with me. He's like, he said, don't become faint-hearted. And then what he told him when you go to battle against your enemies? He said, don't be faint-hearted. And you know what he says? You know that I have served your father with all my strength. He's like, man, I did everything I possibly could. Yet your father has cheated me. He's like, man, you cheated me. He said, I did all this for him. And you know what they do? They cheat you and change my wages 10 times. And they switched up on me about 10 times. Right? That's like a husband with a wife. He said, the wife act like you ain't do nothing for them. And then he says, then they switch up on you 10 times. And he's like, I done served you with all my strength. And he says, now I'm at a point. And he says, let me get what it says. But Elohim did not permit him to harm me. He's like, and then he wanted to harm me after I done did all that. He wanted to do some damage to me after I done did all that. And then Jacob's like, hold up. Because them fighting words. But Elohim did not permit him to harm me. If he said, the spotted shall be your wages, then all the flocks bore spotted. And if he said, the stripe shall be your wages, then all the flocks bore stripe. Thus Elohim has taken away the livestock of your father and given them to me. That's what he did. In the breeding season of the flocks, I lifted up my eyes and saw in a dream that the goats that mated with the flocks were striped and spotted and molded. Then, that's the only thing fruitful and multiply. People got to have intercourse. And he said, create other beings in order to be fruitful and multiply. Then the Malach of Yahuwah said to me in a dream, Yaakov, and I said, here am I. And he said, lift up your eyes and see all the goats that mate with the flock are striped and spotted and mottled. For I have seen all that Laban is doing to you. So you think somebody does all these things for you, and then you switch up 10 times, and he said, and you start switching up, and then you think, and people think, Yahuwah don't see me. He was like, I see everything y'all doing. Verse 13, I am the Elohim of Bethel, where you anointed a pillar and made a vow to me. And he said, he didn't make no false oath. And you know what happens after that? Now arise and go out from this land and return to the land of your kindred. Then Rachel and Leah answered and said to him, is there any portion or any inheritance left in our father's house? That's why Yahushua said, he that loves mother and father more than me is not worthy of me. Right? But it said right here, are we not regarded by him a foreigner? He said, man, we like foreigners then. For he has sold us, and he has indeed devoured our money. Man, he done took our, I told you, people say, oh yeah, you know, it's okay. When family members steal from you, you think people would be like, yeah, you know, it's okay. Nah, they'd be like, hold on, he done took our money, he done devoured our money, our support, how we take care of ourselves and our family and our children. Man, he done messed up all our stuff. You know what people say? Yeah, it don't matter. Yes, it does. He treats us like a foreigner, like we ain't even family anymore. He's taking our money and swindling us, and we're sitting here as if we should stay here. Them women got more sense than a lot of people today. They're like, hold up, man, that man messing up everything. I don't care if you're family or not. I don't care. Right? It says, all the wealth that Elohim has taken away from our father belongs to us and our children. Right? That's the nice people they're thinking about. They thinking about themselves, they thinking about their wife and their children, they thinking about their inheritance, they thinking about the whole big totality as a family. Not as one individual person who want to make an erratic decision based upon their emotions and go do things and create this whole situation. No, they're thinking about the totality of their whole family when they make a decision. Right? It says, all the wealth that Elohim has taken away from our father belongs to us and our children. Now then, whatever Elohim has said to you, do. He like, man, we got to do this thing. I hear that's what you call a card. Right? That's what you call a card. Moving as a card. And you say, what? And so Yaakov arose and set his sons. And you know, Yaakov was confident because everybody in the house was a card. Yahuwah wasn't sending his glittering sword and setting a man against his mother and father, right? It was all based upon what was going on. So Yaakov arose and set his sons and his wives on camels. And he drove away all his livestock and all his property that he had gained, livestock in his possessions that he had acquired in Padan to go to the land of Canaan to his father Yitzhak. To where? To his father. So he's going from a situation with them, and now he's finally taking his possessions and going to where his father is, Yitzhak, who's in the land of Canaan, to join as one people and bring all the wealth too. So you're not only adding your Yitzhak's wealth, now you're adding Yaakov and his son's wealth together. And Laban, it says, Laban had gone to shear his sheep, and Rachel stole her father's household gods. So see, now Rachel still has stuff in her heart. And now you see why Yahushua said, I wet my glittering sword against you. He said, I got my sword now. He said, I come to say a man, he's like, enemies gonna be his own household. You should like, man, I ain't come to bring no peace after you start doing that. So he said, it better leave the gods alone. Right? You know what I say? But it says, and Yaakov tricked Laban in Armenian by not telling him that indeed he intended to flee. And he fled with all that he had and arose and crossed the Euphrates and set his face toward the hill country of Gilead. Right? So that's the whole point of that. But you see all of that. But he said, he's going to switch up on me, right? He said, how you going to change like that? Right? This is the book of Numbers chapter, we almost finished. Where we at? Yeah, we almost finished. This is the book of, this is the book of Jeremiah chapter 31 and verse 1. Jeremiah chapter 31 verse 1. And at that time, declares Yahuwah, I will be the Elohim of all the clans of Yasharal. Is he right now? And they shall be my people. Thus says Yahuwah, the people who survived the sword. Now you see why Yahuwah said, I ain't come to bring peace on earth. I came to bring a sword. So have you survived the sword? Because when Yahushua sing his sword in your house, I assure you, he ain't coming to bring no peace. Especially when y'all ain't repented. It says the people who survived the sword found Khan in the wilderness, in the desert. And when Yasharal sought for rest, and Yahuwah appeared to him from far away, I have loved you with an everlasting love. Therefore I continue my faithfulness to you. He said, I love you with an everlasting love. That's why he sent his sword. And he starts separating things. And he starts showing people what they do in their life. And then other people find out what you do and what you did in your life. And then you find out who's who. And those who survived that sword, he said, you found Khan in the wilderness because you repented. And those who did not repent, Yahusha continually whets his sword against you. And he keeps coming at you with his debar. Right? And it says, therefore I have continued my faithfulness to you. Again, I will build you, and you shall be built. Why? We just read in Dead Sea Scroll, he's going to raise up the faint-hearted, the hearts that melted, the broken backs, the ones who were destitute, despised, and rejected. He said, I'm going to build you up. And you shall be built, O virgin of Yasharal. He said, I'm going to build you up. He called you a virgin. He called you a Bethula. Again, you shall adorn yourself with tambourines, and shall go forth in the dance of the merrymakers. Again, you shall plant vineyards on the mountains of Samaria. The planters shall plant and shall enjoy the fruit. You know why? Because you ain't gonna have no wars. Remember they said, if anybody planted a vineyard and have not taken the fruit and somebody else take it, let him go back to his house. Well, Yahusha like, if you survive the sword, you matter of fact, he said, you're gonna be able to do that. You're gonna be able to go to your house, plant a vineyard, plant some fruits and eat it. And they're gonna be good fruit too. You're gonna be able to do that. Verse 6 says, for there shall be a day when the watchman will call in the hill country of Ephraim, arise, let us go to Saum, to Yahuwah our Elohim. For thus says Yahuwah, sing aloud with gladness for your code, and raise the shouts for the chief of the nations. Proclaim, give praise, and say, O Yahuwah, save your people, the remnant of Yasharal. He says, save them. Save them. Behold, I will bring them from the north country and gather them from the furthest parts of the earth. Among them, the blind and the lame. Oh, there we go. The blind and the lame, and what else? And the pregnant woman, and she who is in labor together. You know how we're in labor together? He in sackcloth and ashes. How you say you're in earnest prayer? Right? Satan trying to come take out your child. Right? Doing all these things to pursue you. And you have a time to await as the danger passes by. He said, you're all pregnant together. And what we also be doing? A great company shall return here. He said, a whole bunch of gentle people, gentle sheep. You know, we talked about the gentleness in First Enoch. They arrayed in all white sheep, real gentle. And you know what else he said? With weeping they shall come. Oh, you know why they don't come with weeping? Because they've been humiliated. That's why. Because they've been humiliated. Just like the woman who was taken captive, and her mother and father, she wept for her mother and father for a week, and then she made her shave her head, and then he said, you go into her, and he said, you found the light in her, and then throw her away, cast her away. Don't you sell her for money either. But you know they did that to Yahusha. They sold him for money, though. That's why you don't want to fight with Yahusha. You don't want to fight with him. He real strong. Like people say, nah, yeah, he's stronger than the 3 mighty men that was with Dawid. He said, man, one man killed so many people, man, the sword stuck to his hand, man. He said, man was so strong. Man, he's stronger than them. Some of them slew giants. Dawid himself slew giants. And you know what happened? It says, with weeping they shall come, and with pleas for mercy I will lead them back. That's why he said his mercy renews every single morning. But you know those who got malice in their heart. He said, those men and women, they got malice in their heart. Them husbands and wives, they got malice in their heart. Those mothers and fathers, they got malice in their heart. The gray hair, they got malice in their heart. Yahuwah said, Yahusha got his sword wet against you. He said, I got my sword, my glittering sword. You know, Yahweh 21:9 said, a sword is sharpened for the sword. But guess what it says? I will lead them back, and I will make them walk by brooks of water. He said, he'd be like a tree planted by rivers of living water. And in a straight and narrow way in which they shall not stumble. But you know the straight way is, the straight narrow way, right? You're a narrow way, right? He said, broad is the way to destruction and narrow is the way to life. Narrow is the way to life is no slander, no gossip, no hatred, no jealousy, no envy, no strife, no complaining, no pride, no arrogance, no conceitedness, no forward mouth, no sowing discord, no false witness, right? That's the narrow path. Because you rich. He said some people are rich with those behaviors. He said, man, it's hard for a rich man to enter in the kingdom. He said it's easy for a camel to go through an eye of a needle, that little narrow passageway for somebody with all that stuff to get in the kingdom. He said, you're not getting in the kingdom. All your profanity, your gossip, your slander, your hatred, all your envy, your lying, right? Your spying, right? All that's a part of it. All that's a part of it. You can't get through that narrow way. You ain't even gonna get there. Like he said, people have a title, but then the title don't mean you're gonna get through the narrow way. It's hard. It's real hard. Right? And people say they got it. In the straight path in which they shall not stumble. For I am the father of Yasharal. He said, now you see why you can't love mother and father more than me. He said, if you do, he said, you're hindered in your understanding of Elohim. There's no guarantee that your mother, your father, your children are going to get through that narrow way. You know, that narrow way, that hard way. There's no guarantee that they're going to want to walk it. You know how we walk, he said, you walk around the track. He said, everybody got to use their 2 legs and walk around. Nobody carrying you. And then you got to go through the actual, he said, when you go through the narrow way, he said, we're going to judge everybody. Once he get everybody there, I'm purified myself and did all these things. And, you know, when you got all Yehuda and Jerusalem together, he said, then I'm going to judge you. Then you're going to find out, I'm going to be swift witness against everybody. It says, and if it says, for I am Yahuwah Yasharal, Ephraim is my firstborn. Hear the words of Yahuwah, O nations, and declare it to the coastlands far away. Say, he who scattered Yasharal will gather him, and will keep him as a shepherd keeps his flock. You know, them sheep. Them sheep are all white, them gentle sheep. That's what you're going to do. He said going to be a lot of them too. For Yahuwah has ransomed Jacob and has redeemed him from the hands too strong for him. He's like, man, that's why. They were too strong for you. Why you think that woman got taken captive? And she got taken captive, her hair shaved off, got humiliated, went into her, and then he said, I found no favor, and then cast her away and threw her out of his house. And he said, don't sell her for money. But why do you think he did that? Why do you think he was coming after that person? These people were too strong for her and her family. They slew her. And he humiliated her. And she wept. He said, you know what? That's the person I want. You know, the people that y'all sent back. That when you were boasting about how strong you were. But yet, you ones that went back to their house, he said, I want them. I'm going to raise them up. And you know what happens after that? And they shall be radiant over the goodness of Yahuwah. Man, they're going to be like the city of the sun. Actually, go back, yeah. It says verse 11. So for Yahuwah has ransomed Jacob and has redeemed him from the hands of them too strong for him. They shall come and sing aloud in the height of Sion, and they shall be radiant over the goodness of Yahuwah, over the grain, the wine, and the oil, and over the young flocks and the herds. Their life shall be like a watered garden, and when they languish, they shall languish no more. They ain't gonna be crying no more. You was, I'm gonna wipe away all her tears, all the tears, right? Then shall the young women rejoice and dance. They ain't gonna be weeping. He said, all the young women gonna be. He said, you see a young damsel, you take her captive, because you're stronger than her, and then you know what, do all that. He said, yeah. After I bring them back and raise them back up, he said, then they're gonna break forth in the dance. Why would you break forth in the dance without these things? And the young men and the old men shall be married. Young men, old men shall be married, because they survived the sword that Yahushua sent. And I will turn their mourning into joy. All that crying they were doing, I'm going to turn it into joy. And I will comfort them and give them gladness for sorrow. I'm going to make a trade. You know, you traded places. So you give Yahuwah sorrow, I'll give you gladness. You give Yahuwah mourning, he'll give you joy. He said, trade. Let's make a trade. You give me some mourning. You give me some sorrow, and then I'll give you gladness and joy. But it said right here, I will feast what? The soul of the priest with abundance, and my people shall be satisfied with my goodness, declares Yahuwah. Thus says Yahuwah, a voice is heard in Ramah, and lamentation and bitter weeping. Raquel is weeping for her children. She refuses to be comforted. When they made that decision to leave Laban, they were like, he's taking the money and the wealth from us, our father, from us, and our children. She would think about her children. They're like, hold up, man, this man's stealing. And you know what people do? It's all right. It's okay. No, it ain't. And what did Yahuwah tell Laban in the middle of the night when he had that dream? He said, be careful what you say, good or bad. Because you know why? Because Yahuwah wore his sword against him. And he don't even know it. Verse 16, thus says Yahuwah, keep your voice from weeping and your eyes from tears, for there is a reward for your work, declares Yahuwah, and they shall come back from the land of the enemy. From the land of the enemy. From the land of Belial. There is hope for your future, declares Yahuwah, and your children shall come back to their own country. Now you see why you were upset at Laban. You're like, man, look at him. I don't care if you family or not. I don't care what you say. You stealing? He said, you my enemy. You a thief. I have heard Ephraim's grieving, and you have disciplined me, and I will discipline like an untrained calf. Right, right. Going to the book of Amos. I think it's chapter 4 and 7. Let's go to the book of Amos. Amos chapter 4 and 7. I also withheld the rain from you when there were yet 3 months to the harvest. How long? How many months we are to the harvest time right now? We're in the 5th month. Yeah, we literally almost there. He said in 3 months to the harvest. You know, if you don't get no rain 3 months before the harvest, like it's raining right now. If you don't get no rain, you already know what's going to happen. I also withheld the rain from you when there were yet 3 months to the harvest. I would send rain on one city and send no rain on another city. One field would have rain, and the field on which it did not rain would wither. Right? That's the whole point. So 2 or 3 cities would wander to another city and drink water and will not be satisfied. Because you know what happens when you ain't got no rain, another rain. You know, they see a person over there, that man got abundance of rain. Let me go where he got the rain at. You know how it is. That's how it is. It says, yet you did not return to me, declares Yahuwah. Even though you went over there and got the, you know how to say, you went over there and got the rainwater. You went over there and got all the information and knowledge. And then he said, you got all the rainwater, but then you still would not return to me. He's like, Yahuwah will be with you while you be with him. But if you forsake him, he will forsake you. So you came over and got the water, but then you went back and you ain't even returned to him. So he like, what's the point? And you know what he said? Verse 9, I struck you with blight and mildew. Your many gardens and your vineyards, your fig trees and your olive trees, and the locusts devoured. Yet you did not return to me, declared Yahuwah. He said, you got the rain, You went to the city, you got the rain, and then now you're producing. But he said, you know what I did? Being that you didn't return to me with your whole heart, I just give you blight. I mess up all your crops. I'll send the cankerworm. Matter of fact, I'll just do all the rain and stuff just so the centipede can eat, right? So the worms can eat, so the insectoids can eat. I'm gonna feed the insectoids in your garden, right? So the fungus can eat. He said, you ain't eating nothing. He said, Yahuwah can do that. And get what he says? I sent among you pestilence after the manner of Mizraim. And I killed your young men with the sword. Because they ain't repent. That's why Yahuwah said, I wet my sword. I'm going to set a man at variance. I'm going to set a man against his mother and his mother-in-law, his father-in-law, his brothers, his sisters, son versus father, mother-in-law, mother-in-law, daughter-in-law against mother-in-law. A man's enemy going to be of his own house. And get what it says, and carry away your houses, and I made the stench of your camp go into your nostrils. Yet you did not return to me, declares Yahuwah. That's the whole point. That's the only reason he's doing it. That's the only reason he sent his son Yahushua to the world, so you would return to him. That's the only reason he did it. And you know what happened? I overthrew some of you, and when Elohim overthrew Sodom and Gomorrah, and you were so brand plucked out of the burning, yet you did not return to me, declares Yahuwah. He said, even though I did all of that. He said, you ain't returned to me. Therefore, thus I will do to you, O Yasharal, because I will do this to you. Prepare to meet your Elohim, O Yasharal. You know, people say, he done did it so many times. He said, go ahead, I'm getting ready to come down now. Now his wrath came on, and now he's getting ready to come out. He's like, you know what? They didn't hear me the first time. Verse 13, for behold, he who forms the mountains and creates the wind. You know what we always start with? He who forms the mountains and creates the wind. The feminine wind that blows on top of the strong trees that make them move. And declares to man what is his thoughts. He said, I do that. So how you going to know your thoughts? Who makes the morning darkness and treads the heights of the earth. Yahuwah of hosts is his name. He said, that's why, he said, when Yahuwah started announcing the things that he does against you, and he said, why is he doing that? Just to know that you know that he coming. Right? But that's the whole point, right? Going to the book of Jeremiah chapter 3, Jeremiah chapter 3 and verse 1. Jeremiah chapter 3 verse 1. Almost finished. Jeremiah chapter 3 verse 1. Jeremiah chapter 3 verse 1. It says, if a man divorces his wife and she goes from him, he's like, he said he divorces her. Unbelieving one. He said a man shouldn't do this. But he said if he does and becomes another man's wife, will he return to her? No. He said, I'm not returning to you. Yahuwah said, Yahuwah will be with you while you be with him. But you forsake him, he will forsake you. He said, return to me and I will return to you. He said, if you want to go be with somebody else, I'm not returning to you. I'm not coming nowhere near you. And he says, would not that land be greatly polluted? He's like, why would I plant seed in a land that's polluted while you with somebody else? What's the sense in that? It makes no sense. And he said, you got two farmers planting seed inside of you. What kind of stuff is that? But he said right here, would not the land be greatly polluted? You have played the whore with many lovers. And will you return to me, declares Yahuwah? He said, so you're going to come back to me. Without admitting that you've done wrong? And you just going to come waltzing through the door like you ain't do nothing wrong? And get what he said. Lift up your eyes to the bare heights and see, where have you not been ravished? He said, flattered. By the wayside, You have sat awaiting lovers, like an Arab in the wilderness. Right, skipping over, going to verse 6. It says, going to verse 11. And Yahuwah said to me, faithless Yasharal has shown herself more righteous than treacherous Yehuda. Right, going over to verse 6. 3 and 6. Yahuwah said to me, in the days of King Josiah, have you seen what she did, O faithless one, Yasharal? How she went up in every high hill and under every green tree and played the Zanah. And I thought after she had done all this, she would return to me. We just read all that stuff. He said, man, I done did all these things. Yet you didn't return to me. You got the rain, the first and latter rain. You did all these things. They didn't return to me. Right? They didn't return to me. But she did not return. And her treacherous sister Yehuda saw it. And the other woman saw it. He's like, she saw it too. And you know what happened? And she saw that all the adulteress of that faithless one, Yasharal. And I had sent her away with a decree of divorce. Yet her treacherous sister Yehuda did not fear. But she too went and played the whore. She's like, you ain't fear either. He's like, I seen you look at her, and then now you looking at, and you didn't even do. You saw what she did, and you did the same thing. He said, you know how you eyed what they did. Yet her treacherous sister Yehuda did not fear, but she too went and played the Zanah, because she took her whoredom lightly, right? Because he said you did it lightly. She polluted the land, committing adultery with stone and tree. He said, we just read it in Nazarene Acts of the Shalakim. He said, you are hindered from the knowledge of Elohim. Yet all this, her treacherous sister Yehuda did not return to me with her whole heart, but in pretense, declares Yahuwah. And Yahuwah said to me, faithless Yasharal has shown herself more righteous than treacherous Yehuda. Why? Because she was looking at everything Yasharal did and did the same thing. So he like, how you see somebody doing wrong and you do the same thing? Go and proclaim these words to the north and say, return, O faithless Yasharal, declares Yahuwah, and I will look to you in anger. I will not look to you in anger, for I am merciful, declares Yahuwah, and I will not be angry forever. Only acknowledge your guilt. He said you got to take accountability for what you've done. But it says right here, that you rebelled against Yahuwah, your Elohim, and scattered your favors among every foreigner under every green tree, and that you have not obeyed my voice, declares Yahuwah Elohim. Right, so this is the book of, where we at? Right, this is the Odes of Solomon, Ode Shaloma. Odes of Solomon. Odes of Solomon, Ode Shaloma, chapter 18, and verse 1. Odes of Solomon, Ode Shaloma, Odes of Solomon, 18 and 1. My heart was raised and enriched in the love of the Most High. He said, with everlasting love, I have loved you, so that I might praise him with his name. He said, they're going to come to his song with singing. He said, extolling his name. My members were strengthened, right? He said he's going to strengthen those who are faint-hearted and heart melted in the Dead Sea Scrolls. Who are melted in heart. And you know what he said? That they may not fail from his power. He said, don't even become faint-hearted. You know what he said when he go into the battle? That's what Yahushua did when he went to the battle. Then he sent the faint-hearted people back, his disciples, to their house. Because they were. And guess what happened? Infirmities fled from my body. He said they all left. And it says, and it stood firm for Yahuwah by his will, because his kingdom is firm. He said, ain't moving. He said, I'm Yahuwah, I change not. You see all the things he ain't want in Malachi. Malachi already told you. He said, I'm Yahuwah, I change not. And guess what it says? He said he stood firm. It says, O Yahuwah, for the sake of those who are in need, do not expel your word from me. Because there's people in need. He said, don't expel your word from me, because if you do, then you're going to become a nakash. Guess what happens? Nor for the sake of their works withhold your perfection from me. And after they hear the debar the sword, don't withhold your perfection from me, though. Let not light be conquered by darkness. He said, don't let light be conquered by darkness. You know what happens? Nor let truth flee from falsehood. Now you see why Yahusha said, whom do you seek? You seek Yahusha Nazareth. He said, I am he. He ain't flee from falsehood. They had the weapons, the swords. And they come at him like the enemy, not even knowing that they were the enemy. And amazing, when Yahusha spoke his sword, they hit the ground. But all this was a part of his walk. Let your right hand set our salvation to victory, and let it receive every region, and preserve on the side of everyone who is besieged by evils. You are my Elohim. Falsehood and death are not in your mouth. Only perfection is your will. That's the only reason he's doing it. Why is he wetting his sword? Why do you think he bring his bow, his arrow, and his club? He bring his sword. Why do you think he do that? You are my Elohim. Falsehood and death are not in your mouth. Why? Because the ways of sin is death, and falsehood. You giving out the right hand of falsehood now? You have somebody shake your hand. Only perfection is your will. That's the only reason he's doing it. And vanity you knew not, because neither does it know you. You know, I say, Yahusha I know, Shaul I recognize. Who are you? He said, vanity don't know me. Dawid said, I almost slipped though. He said, what good is a rich man with no sense? And it says right here, and ignorance appeared like dust, and like the foam of the sea. And vain people thought that it was great. And they became like its form, and were impoverished. Why? Because you toss to and fro every wind of doctrine. Matter of fact, it's like the raging waves. He said, we could like the troubled sea. They can't be quiet. They can't go and sack off in ashes. They can't go in their room and close the door. They can't be 80 new. They can't be humble and meek and quiet and lowly. They can't. As Yeshayahu 57 said. Well, 59. But he says, they can't. He said, your iniquities that hid his face from you, right? But that's all a part of it. In vain, people thought that it was great. But the wise understood, going to verse 13, but the wise understood and contemplated, and were not polluted by their thoughts, because they were in the mind of the Most High Yahuwah, and mocked those who were walking in error. Then, he says, then they spoke the truth from the breath which the Most High breathed into them. Right? That's what they did, right? Right? And that's the whole point, right? All right, just the book of, I think it's Haggai. He said, man, they spoke the truth, right? So this is the book of, this book of Amos, chapter 5 and verse 13. Actually going to Amos 5 and verse 11. Actually, Amos 5 and 10. They hate him who reproves in the gate, and abhor him who speaks the truth. He said, then they spoke the truth. And you know what happened? Therefore, because you trample on the poor and exact taxes of grain from him, you have built houses of hewn stone, but you shall not dwell in them. You have planted pleasant vineyards, but you shall not drink their wine. For I know how many are your transgressions, and how great are your sins. You who afflict the righteous, who take a bribe, and turn the needy aside in the gate. Therefore, he who is prudent will keep silent in such a time, for it is an evil time. Seek Elohim, seek good and not evil, that you may live, so that Yahuwah, the Elohim of hosts, will be with you. As you have said, hate evil and love good, and establish justice in the gate. It may be. Right? It may be that Yahuwah, the Elohim of hosts, would be gracious to the remnant of Yusuf. Right? It may be. Right? Perhaps. Right? But all that's a part of it. All that's a part of it, right? That should not be, right? But all that's a part of it, right? So this is the book of Joel. I think it's Micah. The book of Micah, Micah chapter 2 and verse 5. Micah chapter 2 verse 5. It says, therefore you will have not to cast the line by lot in the assembly of Yahuwah. Do not preach, thus they preach. One should not preach for such things. Disgrace will not overtake us. Should this be said, O house of Yaakov? Has Yahuwah grown impatient? Are these his deeds? Do not my words do good to him who walk uprightly? But lately my people have risen up as an enemy. They have what? They've risen up as an enemy. And guess what? You strip the rich robe from those who pass by trustingly, who with no thought of war. The women of my people you drive out from their delightful houses. From their young children you take away the splendor, my splendor forever. Now you see why he told Laban, be careful what you say, good or bad. But when Yaakov met with Rachel and Leah, he explained to them. He said, you my family and everything, and you took our wages and you changed them 10 times, and you stole the money that's supposed to be our father's, and you're supposed to be ours. Right? He said, how are you going to be able to do that? Right? But that's the whole point, right? Last couple of things, right? So this is Book of Chamy'shy, Proverbs 29:23. One's pride will bring him low, but he who is lowly in Ruach will obtain honor. Right? He who is humble, right? That's the whole point. He who is, how you say, humiliated, humble, in a depressed state, that's shafal, right? Humiliated. Right? He said that's this, but he who is lowly in Ruach will obtain honor. Why do you think that woman was in a humiliated state? But then Yahuwah's like, that's the person I want. That's the woman I want. Right? That's the whole point. This is Psalms 37:7-11. Be still before Yahuwah and wait patiently for him. Fret not yourself or Korah over the one who prospers in the way, over the man who carries out evil devices. Laban. He said, don't get angry. Refrain from Korah, anger, and forsake wrath. He said, don't even do it. Fret not yourself. It tends only to evil. Now you see why Yaakov wasn't really getting angry about it. He was about to. For evildoers shall be cut off, but those who wait for Yahuwah shall inherit the Eretz. Now you see why he told him to go back to that land, that Eretz, where he was from before, where his father Yitzhak was dwelling. He told him, he said, how long you had to wait, man? We've been about 14 years, 7 years more. He said, okay, you can go back now. Verse 10, in just a little while the wicked shall be no more. Though you look carefully at his place, he will not be there. But the meek shall inherit the Eretz and delight themselves in the abundance of shalom. Right? Because when you waiting patiently, you got to be still. You got to be silent. He says it also, it means daman. He says, be still, means daman, be silent. Be still. Wait and be dumb. Then he said he's going to raise up the dumb in the Dead Sea Scrolls. He said, I'm going to strengthen the dumb. Matter of fact, the ones that are silent, I'm going to strengthen them. Matter of fact, I'm going to raise up the melted-hearted people. I'm going to strengthen them too. It says to make quiet, right? Because you know the meek is Aynu, right? Ayin Nun Wu, right? It means the afflicted, the needy, the poor. He said you oppress the poor. But these are the people that who are going to save. The poor and the humble. The meek, right? Right? He's going to, he said, abound in the abundance of peace. Because Yahushua said, I ain't come to send peace. Because they ain't repent. But once you repent, then you will delight yourselves in the abundance of shalom. Once you repent. Or shoot. But if you don't, Yahuwah said, everybody's going to be fighting each other. In your own house. In your household. Because nobody repent. Right? It says, but the Aynu, the humble, the meek, shall inherit the Aydah and delight themselves in the abundance of peace, completeness, soundness, peace, quiet, tranquility. We read that. They're going to sow their seed in tranquility. They're going to plant their vineyards in tranquility. It says peace from war. Friendly. The welfare, right? All that's a part of it, right? Proverbs 16, 19 through 20. It is better to be of a shafal ruach, or a humble ruach, with the Aynu, with the humble, than to divide the spoil with the proud. Whoever gives thought to the word will disturb a good, and Parach is the one who trusts in Yahuwah. Why? Because if you don't think of thought to the debar, then that's what happens. Then you're going to end up making erratic decisions based upon your emotions, and you're going to affect many other people. And then you're going to find yourself in a situation that you're going to have to deal with for many years. Right? Because that's the whole point of the whole thing. You're going to find yourself in situations that you should not be in, right? This is Wisdom of Solomon, chapter 7. It's the Wisdom of Solomon. Wisdom of Shalom, or Wisdom, chapter 7, and verse 1. It says, I myself also am a mortal man, like all, and the offspring of him who was first made on earth. And in my mother's womb was fashioned to be flesh in the time of 10 months, being compacted in blood of seed of man, and pleasure, and the pleasure that came with sleep. And when I was born, I drew in the common air, and I fell upon the earth, which is of like nature. And the first voice which I uttered was crying, as all others do. Right? That's the first thing I did. You know what happened when you brought low? He said that's the first thing you're supposed to do. Verse 4 says, and I was nursed in a swaddling clothes, and that with cares. For there is no king that had any other beginning of birth. He said, there wasn't nobody else like that. You know what happens after that? For all men have one entrance into life, and the light going out. Naked you came in, and naked you're going to leave. Wherefore I prayed, and understanding was given to me. And I called upon Elohim, and the Ruach of Hakmah came to me. And I preferred her before scepters and thrones, and esteemed riches. Nothing is in comparison of her. Neither compare I her to any precious stone, because all gold in respect to her is as little sand, and silver shall be counted as clay before her. I loved her above health and beauty, and chose her to have instead of light, for the light that cometh from her never goeth out. All good things together came to me with her, and innumerable riches are in her hands. And I rejoice with them all, because wisdom goeth before them. And I knew not that she was the mother of them. I learned diligently to communicate her liberally. I do not hide her riches, for he is a treasure unto men that never faileth, which they that use become the friends of Elohim, being commended from the gifts that come from learning. It comes from learning, right? This is the book of Sirach, chapter 3, 17 through 23. My son, go on thy business in Aydah and meekness. So shalt thou be beloved of him that is approved. The greater thou art, the more Aydah humble thyself, and thou shalt find favor before Yahuwah. Many are in high places and of renown, but mysteries are revealed unto the meek. He said, revealed unto the meek. For the power of Yahuwah is great, and honored with the lowly. Seek not out things that are too hard for thee, neither search for things that are above thy strength. Because you know what happened? He said he delivered us from those who are stronger than us. He said, why would you seek out something that's above your strength? Why don't you seek out the one who gives you strength, who strengthens those who are not strong enough to fight the battles in their life. Verse 22, but what is commanded thee, think thereupon with reverence. For it is not needful for thee to see with thine eyes the things that are in secret. Be not curious in unnecessary matters, for more things are showed unto thee than men understand. Right? He said, it's showed unto thee than men understand. Right? So this one thing in the kingdom. Right? So this is the. Yeah, so this is the book of Ezekiel, chapter 20. Excellent. Yeah, Ezekiel chapter 20, verse 9. Ezekiel chapter 20, verse 9. But I acted for the sake of my name, that it should not be profaned in the sight of the nations among whom they live, in whose sight I made myself known to them in bringing them out of the land of Mizraim. So I led them out of the land of Mizraim and brought them into the wilderness. And I gave them my statutes and made known to them my rules by which a person that does them shall live. Moreover, I gave them my Shabaths as a sign between me and them, that they may know that I am Yahuwah who sanctifies them. The house of Yasharah rebelled against me in the wilderness. They did not walk in my statutes, or rejected my rules, by which if a person does them, he shall live. And my Shabbats were greatly profaned. Right? People saying, why does he do all of this? Because it's important for him in his name. Because everybody has a name that they don't want people to talk about or bear false witness against. It make it seem like it's somebody else or this other person, and nobody wants that. But he said, y'all not doing that to me. Right? Because that's the whole point. Because he don't want his name messed up in front of other people because of what other people want to do. Because that's the whole point. That's the whole point. Right? So going to the book of Hosea right quick. Book of Hosea. The book of Hosea, Husha. Hosea chapter 4 and verse 1. Actually, no. Hosea chapter 2 verse 1. Hosea chapter 2 verse 1. Hosea chapter 2 verse 1. Hosea, Husha chapter 2 verse 1. Say to your brothers, you are my people, and to your sisters, you have received mercy. Plead with your mother plead, for she is not my wife. He like, Yahuwah like, please, for my name's sake. She is not my wife, and I am not her husband. He's like, I ain't your mother's husband. She ain't my wife. Please do that. That she put away her whoring from her face and her adultery from between her breasts. Now you see why Yahuwah just said, I'm going to set a daughter-in-law against her mother. People are like, what you mean by that? And you know who's going to say that? He told you to do it. He said, plead with your mother. And you know the sad part about it? If you do that right now, what you think gonna happen? He said, a servant no greater than his master. Lest I strip her naked and make her as the day of she was born. Because everybody had one interest into life and the light going out. And I will make her like a wilderness and make her like a parched land and kill her with thirst. You think it's good for a person not to drink water and not to eat food? Yeah, it is. When you're doing things like that, it's better not to eat food. It's better to die of thirst. It's better for you not even having anything to drink. You know why? That's why Yahushua was on the totality, and he said, I thirst. Because he's only trying to make you like him. That's the only reason he's telling people to do it. I'm trying to make you like me. Upon her children also I will have no mercy, because they are the children of whoredom. Because they won't repent. That's the whole point. For their mother has played the whore, or the zanah, she has conceived them and has acted shamefully. These are all a part of why Yahushua is so adamant on people dying of thirst and hunger. Because he wants people to fast. He wants people not to have any food. When you're in this state, he's saying, I'm going to just wet my sword. And hopefully they will return to me with their whole heart. For she said, I will go after my lovers, who give me my bread and my wood and my flax and my oil and my drink. You are like, I ain't your husband no more. You know what happens after that? Because I'm trying to get you to stop eating. He said, I'm trying to get you to fast. I'm trying to get you to get rid of those behaviors. But you want to go and go call on your love. You don't want to do it for me? I'll go find somebody else to do it for me. Not even knowing, you could just stay with the person you want to do it for and just fast and pray and get rid of your behaviors instead of going to your lovers to do it for you. You could have just stayed with that person and just fast and pray and got rid of your behaviors, and then you wouldn't have did all the other extra stuff. You wouldn't have no extra verses written about you. But therefore I will hedge her up her way with thorns, and I will build a wall against her. Now he's going to trap you in even more, so that she cannot find her paths. He's like, you ain't going to be able to find your paths back to those lovers. She shall pursue her lovers, but not overtake them. He said, you ain't going to be able to seduce them. And she shall seek them, but shall not find them. He said, you ain't going to find them. Then she shall say, once he will cut off all your ways and your avenues to escape. Because people be trying, he said, you be trying to run, or you was like, I'm going to cut all your ways to escape. I'm going to make sure I cut them all off. So you can't go nowhere. And then after I do that, you're going to try to seek out a way to get out and find a way to get some food, get some things you need. And he said, you know what, I'm going to make it to where you can't find them. And the only reason I'm doing that, then she shall say, I will go and return to my first husband. Now he said, you will always be my first love. Right, going back. I'm going back to my first husband. Why? For it was better for me than now. Because Yahuwah said, I'll return to me, I'll return to you. But first Yahuwah's like, I gotta cut off every single avenue. Anything you want to do, north, south, east, and west. Thoughts, anything you want to do, I gotta cut them all off. That's the only one I'm gonna get you back. And guess what it said? And she did not know that it was I who gave her the grain, the wine, the oil, who lavished her with silver and gold, which she used for Baal. Right, so this is the last thing, and I'm done. This is the book of Psalms. Actually, it's the book of Psalms, chapter 119. Actually, 42. Psalm chapter 42, verse 1. Psalm Talim 42, 1. As a deer pants for the flowing streams, so my soul for you. That's why he said, she's going to die of thirst. That's the only reason. He said, I want you to be like that deer. I want you to come back to where the place where these things are. I want you to see. As a deer pants by the flowing stream, so my soul pants, my soul for you, O Elohim. That's why you want Yasharal. That's what you want all his people to do, and all the people of the earth. My soul thirsts for Elohim, for the living Elohim. When shall I come and appear before Elohim? My tears have been my food day and night. Now you see why he wants you to die of thirst. He said, you got water in there somewhere. You just don't know it yet. While they say to me all day long, where is your Elohim? These things I remember as I pour out my soul. How I would go with the throng and lead them in the procession to the house of Elohim with glad shouts and songs of praises, a multitude keeping festival. Why are you cast down, O my soul? And why are you in turmoil within me? He said, why are you fainting? Hope in Elohim, for I shall again praise him, my salvation and my Elohim. My soul is cast down within me, therefore I remember you from the land of Yardan and Hermon and Mount Mizor. Right, skipping over to verse 11. It says, why are you cast down, O my soul? And why are you in turmoil within me? Hope in Elohim, for I shall again praise him, my salvation and my Elohim. Right? So that's the only reason Yahuwah wants you to die of thirst. He says, so your soul can thirst for him and you can be saved. Right? So we look at all that. We look at Yahushua Mashiach. There's a lot more. He said, we look at Yahushua Mashiach. We look at the truth, the way, the life, Yahushua Mashiach in his true life. And the way one should walk. He said, not in the old life, but in the new life. And to prove your love for him. He said, not to prove it for a temporary time, but to prove it for a lifetime. For he said, we all walk in darkness, and we all walked in lack of understanding. But it's through him, and through his knowledge and understanding, that we can return with our whole heart and our whole mind. And to go on our business with meekness, so shalt thou find be beloved of him who is approved. For the greater thou art, the humble thyself. Thou shalt find favor before Yahuwah, and not to make decisions based upon erratic thought and erratic behaviors and our emotions and our thoughts, and not think about the totality of the actual effects and the ripple effects that it will have from generations and generations and generations and other people that are attached to other people, and to think about each other and not to trample on one another, and not to trample on each other, but to understand what truth is, the bar is. And when you speak the truth, understand that the truth is there to make one free. It is give one the opportunity to repent. And when you do repent, it allows you to rejoice and to delight thyself in the abundance of shalom. and peace ain't knowing that you're at peace with Yahuwah Elohim. He has no wrath towards your life. We know in part, we know in part. When that which perfect is come, then that which in part is done away. We give gifts unto men, we give gifts unto women, we give gifts to everyone, that people may be saved, to save people's lives, right? To save people's lives and to save our thoughts and our mind, and the cares and the things of this life that does not allow us to come to maturehood within ourselves. And maturity within ourselves comes through the understanding of the Debar, and not through our own love, own things that we desire. So we guard ourselves from ourselves. We guard ourselves from the seeds of Satan that may try to get into our heart and our mind. For these are the things from our youth that one is fighting against to this day. For we live in this world, we are not of it. And as long as we live in this world, we walk in a new, we walk in a not, we walk in humility and meekness. And our humiliation is our salvation, knowing that He desires those who are rejected. He desires the ones that are cast away. He desires the ones that are weak and not able to fight the battle, for He came to strengthen them. For the meek shall inherit the earth. The meek shall inherit the earth.